across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense, as you already knew. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device, it is, as always, great to have your company. As always, again, lots to talk about today as well. And if you do miss anything of the show, you've missed anything from yesterday's, you can go to my YouTube page. We called it the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, so you've got no excuses for not being able to find it. If you hit subscribe, you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, the good news just keeps on a-coming for Keir Starmer, as the first deportation of a Channel migrant under the PM's one-in, one-out deal with France, announced to much fanfare in the summer, was cancelled at the last minute. I know, we're all surprised. It's understood that one migrant was due to be flown from Heathrow to Paris on Monday. The flight was postponed amid protests by charities. Why it's got anything to do with them, and threats of legal action. Another flight is being planned for today. Let's hope they've got fully flexible tickets, because I'm led to believe those tickets they bought one way on Air France were £650 each. Your and my money paying that £650 each for them. I mean, you can get to Paris for about 40 quid on a cheapy airline. I have no idea why we're paying that much, but there we are. Meanwhile, Downing Street is in meltdown over something else entirely, as Keir Starmer still struggles to explain why he initially backed Peter Mandelson last week, even while officials were urgently investigating the very morning of PMQs when he was saying he has full confidence in Britain's ambassador to the US. Officials were investigating new information about his links to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. I think the questions still go further. Why did he appoint him in the first place? He says if he knew now what he knew then, what he knows now, he wouldn't have. But do we actually know any more? I'm not sure we do. We'll talk about that up next. Plus, in further chaotic scenes for number 10, the PM's Director of Strategy, Paul Ovenden, has been forced to quit as it was revealed he'd sent sexually explicit messages to a colleague about the Labour MP, Diane Abbott. There's a lot to say about this, but I do still think the biggest surprise in relation to this story is that Keir Starmer had a Director of Strategy. I mean, has he been on holiday for the last year and a bit? Because I didn't notice any. Meanwhile, this sounds like a good news story. Will it actually come to fruition is a different thing. But the new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has said police must stop criminalising offensive comments on social media. She said that told MPs that there needed to be a strong line drawn between perfectly legal, fair comment, even if it's offensive, and illegal actions on the internet. Very encouraging if they actually hold good. Tories took a big game on that and never actually did anything about it. In fact, tried to make it actually worse. So we will see what happens there. But I'm going to talk about all of that, plenty more besides, including a new UN report saying that Israel is guilty of genocide in Gaza. As we know, UN not big on facts. This as Israel has launched its fresh ground offensive in Gaza to eliminate Hamas. Not that Hamas ever gets any mention in any of the BBC reports I've listened to. Apparently they're just doing it for the sake of it. It's funny that, isn't it? Anyway, joining me for all the chat on all the big topics, can't wait to hear what he has to say, Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you. Now, it's a Tuesday, not a Thursday, so I caught you out.
I was just going to say, this is going to throw everybody all day. What day is it? What day is it? You know, it is Tuesday. You've helped us out. We've got a little bit of a swapping around because someone was unwell, unable to come in. So we're very, very grateful to you.
My pleasure.
Hot-footing it from Birmingham. Thank you very much. Lots to talk about.
What, are things going on?
The things are going on. Literally, been on air since 2016. I mean, since
Non-stop,
2016. There have been some holidays in between, guys. And every day I'm like, oh, it's another busy news day. It is. I mean, when does it stop? We were told by Downing Street Monday morning, like, as we promised within weeks, those first deportation flights, the one-in, one-out deal with France, they're going to take place this week, probably as early as Monday. And then we heard very little, and then very little. Apparently, one guy was supposed to be on this Air France
They did say one in, one out, so you're
exactly.
one selected.
It's supposed to be about, 50, even the trial, only about 50, 50 in, 50 out. Of course, it'd be more because they'll be legal, they'll be able to bring their relatives. And meanwhile, we got 450 a day, 500 a day. I mean, the whole thing's mad anyway. If they think that this policy, even if it goes ahead, even if it went ahead on scale, like thousands of people deported and then thousands more come in, it still wouldn't be touching the sides of the issue that we can identify as the problem. But the fact they couldn't even get the first flight off the ground. Now, the Rwanda flight, we all remember that airport, the flight, the plane sitting actually on the ground as one by one these migrants were taken off the plane because their legal advice was you can't deport this person. Do you think this is ever going to happen? They're going to try again today?
No, not in the slightest. And if ever there was a way to encourage more people to come across, you come across in a little boat, you get put up in a 4-star hotel, you get 3 meals a day, you get trips out to all of the different theme parks around the country, to Legoland, you get taught golf and everything else. And if your asylum fails, you get a business class flight back to Paris. We put up in a 4-star hotel.
Do you think that's why they're that expensive? They must be business class.
Or flexible or something. But you get a nice flight back to then
return to the States for that.
Yeah, to then go back to Calais again and do it all over again. Rinse and repeat.
And I'm going to guess the smuggling gangs aren't stupid, and they're going to say, if you do get sent back, we'll give you a free trip back again. Don't worry about it. They've honestly, these people are master entrepreneurs. They know what they're doing. It's just madness. But the fact that they can't actually get their first one out, you think, I mean, again, this is how bad they are. Or maybe this was after the number 10 director of strategy, about whom we'll talk in a moment, after he'd already resigned. Who knows? But the fact that you talk about it before the flight is in the air, just shut up about it until the guy is literally taken off and you go, right, first deportation flight is gone.
But I think Keir Starmer's now beginning to get a dose of reality, because he was encouraging all of these charities and legal firms and all the rest of it to fight anything that the Tories had put out.
Yeah.
And hence why Rwanda never really got off the ground, because at every opportunity it was stopped by the same charities.
By Keir's mates.
And Keir then said, we'll bin this, I'll smash the gangs. Well, he hasn't smashed too many gangs from what we can see. And his first attempt at doing it has failed.
It's genuinely embarrassing. I would love to hear from you about this. I mean, is anyone even surprised?
No.
It is laughable. It is extraordinary. We cannot get people out of this country, and I'm going to guess that the people they've put on the flight, now I'm going to guess they're not rapists and murderers and things, or anyone we're sure about. They've just got them off the boats, they've been in detention, haven't been able to commit any crimes.
The French wouldn't want any others.
The French would refuse. The French get a veto. So,
exactly.
But they're going to be single blokes who've got no right to be here. They'll have chosen the people they thought were the best case scenarios, and they can't get even one on a plane. Yeah. We are utterly just broken nation that
Completely.
we can't do this. It's utterly pathetic. I want to hear from you. What's your reaction? I mean, surprise? I'm thinking not. Do you think they'll ever get any of these flights onto ground? And does it even matter? Does it even matter? It's such a pointless exercise. We're going to get other people in who are going to be legal, who, from France. Perfectly safe in France, but they say, I keep saying this, but they've got a second cousin in Leicester, they've got a claim to be in Britain, and then they're going to come here, and then they're going to have a right as a legal arrival here to benefit, council house, and bring their families. I mean, again, it's not 1 in, 1 out. It's 17 in, 1 out, and then another 17 relatives.
Yeah.
And
who then claim that they're additional relatives.
Yeah, and of course, we're not paying for their hotels anymore. No, but we're going to pay for their council house. Oh, no, sorry, they're all engineers and entrepreneurs. They're going to be paying for themselves. They're going to be jumping the housing list, because immigrants always do. I'm sorry, it's not racist or bigoted, because if you've got no links with anyone here, but you can, you haven't got a family member, like, if you're homeless here, well, can't your mum put you up? No. Well, I haven't got a mum here. They're in, Syria or wherever. Then the council has to house you. So you jump ahead of people who do have family links here, who are already here. It's just madness.
Yeah, and that's more pressure on the NHS, more GPs appointments you're not going to get, because of course they're prioritised.
Yeah.
We've seen.
And let's bring in some more kids who don't speak English, not even as a first language, but don't speak English. Into the classroom. Well, so your kid becomes a teaching assistant rather than a pupil in that class, because they're having to help. And who do you think the teachers are focusing on? Now, you can understand they want to help the kids who have sort of got more to catch up on, but that means that your kid ain't going to get taught. And that's the reality of what is happening. Anyway, your thoughts, please. 8344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs the standard network rate message. Let's talk about Keir Starmer's woes.
Which ones?
I mean, he's
woes.
so...
Oh, dear.
So, yes, everyone we speak to, we had Andrew Neil on the show yesterday, and he's been, he's a very good commentator. He has been around. He's
Yeah.
counted them in. He's counted them out over the years. He's met these people, interviewed these people at great length, and you think, didn't think he'd be that bad. That's the thing. I've said this for a year and 2 months. I didn't think he'd be that bad. I never thought he was great. I've got family members who voted for Keir Starmer. I've got family members who know him. That North London thing. Oh, they really, he's very clever. He's, a great white hope. I'm like, I don't know what you're seeing that I don't see. You can tell from he's so robotic in his speech. This little pool clip he gave, and he was asked about Jeffrey Epstein. Now, he's admitted that he was told of this investigation into Peter Mandelson's close friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, the now dead but paedophile. Technically not a paedophile because he was interested in 14-year-olds plus, but nevertheless. Children. If you've had a 14-year-old daughter, you know what they look like. They look like a child, yeah, because they're children. But he's he basically, Keir Starmer, appointed Peter Mandelson when it was known that he was very good friends with this man to the US ambassador, the UK ambassador to the US role, despite knowing, and we all knew that he had that friendship with Epstein, and had it long after. He was actually convicted, pleading guilty to 2 charges in 2006, to basically the charges of solicitation of prostitution. I'm trying not to sneeze. Solicitation of prostitution and solicitation of prostitution of a minor, a 14-year-old girl. So he pleaded guilty to that and went to pretend open prison for that. We already knew about that, and he stayed friends with him when he was appointed. Then we had these emails come out via Bloomberg. Keir Starmer went to PMQs last Wednesday afternoon and said he had full confidence in Jeffrey Epstein. Probably did. Sorry, into Peter Mandelson. Probably does. And then later, now I've seen these emails. Now I know this close friendship. This birthday book. I'm going to have to sack him. There's an emergency debate in the Commons, 3 hours of debate about this. I'm thinking 3 hours is rather too long. There are other things that we could be debating that affect real people's lives, MPs, thank you. That's going to ramp up the pressure. But this is what the Prime Minister told an interviewer yesterday. Let's watch and listen to that clip.
Obviously, the diplomatic post of American ambassador, really important post. And Peter Mandelson, before he was appointed, went through a due diligence process. That's the propriety and ethics team, went through a process. And therefore, I knew of his association with Epstein. But had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him.
Had I known then what I know now, I would never have appointed him. That's not true. Because we don't really know much more now than we knew then. This was a man who was close friends with a man long after he had pleaded guilty to charges of soliciting for prostitution of a 14-year-old girl. Just to be clear about what that meant, including the details that came out in the grand jury investigation. We're talking about a 14-year-old girl who was asked to give him a massage, was told to strip virtually naked herself while he masturbated himself, and we believe, asking her to masturbate him as well. There were lots of other girls that were involved in this, lots of other, as we know, even at the time, but lots of those charges were dropped for this pleaded down issue. Now, what he pleaded guilty to alone, Keir Starmer's got a daughter. I've got a daughter. Keir Starmer has got a teenage daughter, and he was quite happy to appoint a man who had pleaded guilty to soliciting a 14-year-old girl to basically, masturbate him.
Appoint a man who had supported and was best friends with someone who had...
And continued to be best friends with.
And continued to try and suggest that even after he was convicted, he'd find some way of... And it was so wrong.
I mean, again, he wasn't convicted and pleaded not guilty. He pleaded guilty. Epstein pleaded guilty to this.
Yeah. And if you look at Keir Starmer's body language in that interview, he's lying. You can tell he's lying. You can tell the way his eyes are darting all over the place, the way his facial expression is, and he's withdrawing from... He knows that what he's saying is not true. He knew everything beforehand, and he should have known more. And we've seen...
But he knew... But we know... He's admitted. He knows that they were... The Foreign Office had this information. It had passed the downstream. So either you've got a chief of staff who didn't pass that information to you, you've got a totally inadequate, incompetent government. Yes.
Well, we know that.
Yeah. Or you chose not to... But why would you give full confidence to somebody? You could have said, there's an investigation, and I will
I'll
get
come
back
back to I'll come back to the House whenever I got the details of that investigation. He should have said that.
I just don't think there's anything we know now that we didn't know when Mandelson was appointed.
No, there's nothing. But if you look at Keir Starmer's history of everything before someone gets sacked, it's always, I've got full confidence. He'll say that in public because he's trying to suggest that he's in charge and he's protecting the Labour Party, protecting the government, all the rest of it, when actually he's undermining it because he's not bringing the truth out and he's hiding the truth.
Absolutely.
And his facial expressions, the body language.
But he's also tetchy. He really dislikes someone sort of questioning his competence or his morality.
Or his authority. He's got an ego. Ego is the biggest word.
But I don't think he'll have an ego much longer because I mean he is hemorrhaging cabinet ministers and staff and ambassadors and MPs support. There's no doubt. More pressure. His director of strategy resigned yesterday. I mean, again, didn't know he had one. I think we're going to disagree on this. Going to Paul Ovenden. It was a lewd email exchange with a former colleague. Again, a former colleague. It's about the veteran Labour MP, now an independent, I think, Diane Abbott. Everyone's claiming it's misogynistic, it's sexist. Now, basically, he was reporting in an email that there had been a conversation, with, I think, in the pub, and it actually involved women involved as well. So I don't know why it's misogynistic and everything. I don't know why people are throwing in racist. Just because Diane Abbott is black doesn't mean if someone's having a conversation about her that isn't flattering, that it's about the colour of her skin. I've never met this man. I hold no candle for him. I hold no candle for this government. But this is not a resigning matter. He was playing, I can't say some of the words on air, so I would say it's a crude version of Snog, Marry, Avoid, a game that everyone I know has played. And basically, you give someone, right, I'm going to give you 3 names. Which one would you snog? Which one would you marry? Which one would you, throw off a cliff is another version of it. My version is I always marry the one I least like because I can slow torture them. Just being married to me for the rest of your life. Imagine that.
That's not slow torture.
There was some very sexually explicit, but he was repeating what other people had said. Yeah. This is a conversation other people had, including women, not sexist, not racist, just a sodding game in a pub or whatever. Or it's about a colleague. Well, you worked at the Labour Party when she was Labour MP. It's not like talking. It's not like sitting in a work meeting and talking about your colleague who sits 2 desks away from you. And it was 8 years ago, and he's resigned. The fun auditors will not stop until we all sit in silence all day, every day, apart from when someone asks us what our preferred pronouns are.
We need the truth about Beergate to come out. But no, this is something that sat on the shelf until journalists have gone, now is the time to bring this out because we know that it can create the sensation
Get it over and done with.
Wouldn't have done beforehand. But and it's all about the intent behind the game. Yes, it would be racist, misogynistic if the intent was racism or misogynistic behaviour. It wasn't. It was
It's a fun game.
It was a game that a number of people were having in a pub and wasn't meant to be.
Here's the thing, though. A lot of the Labour people, they would call for the resignation of Tories or Reform people who did that.
Of course.
Everyone? But I think that private conversations should remain private.
Yes.
And private conversations involving lewd, explicit, whatever. I just don't think people should be held for. Would you keep your job? Let me ask you, the audience. Would you keep your job seriously if every one of your private messages about someone you distantly knew at work were made public? I doubt it very much.
I'm sorry. There is a reason why he should have. He needs to have resigned and all the rest of it.
Because he's rubbish at being a director of strategy.
No. Have you ever had an earworm of a tune that you absolutely hate going through your mind?
Yes, I know what you're going to say.
I'm sorry.
Images
the image that's been implanted in my mind.
Diana,
that's against the Geneva Convention. I'm sorry.
I can't say any of it on air. I'm just not allowed to. But I've tweeted about it. But I've pleaded the actual conversation. I've got no problem with it. I've genuinely. And someone said, "What if it was about you?" And it'd be like, I'd say, like, "Oi," I'm sorry, I
kind of a parachute before we go off the
everyone
cliff.
needs to absolutely get a grip. I think people should resign because they're completely incompetent or dishonest, not because of this. What do you make of Danny Kruger, the first sitting Tory MP, and indeed a shadow cabinet member and a figure, used to be a speechwriter for Cameron, he was political secretary to Boris Johnson. I mean, he's a serious person. He's not an also-ran who just sort of turns up in the corner or got a blue rosette on. But Danny Kruger was the first sitting Tory MP to defect to Reform yesterday, saying that the Conservative Party is over. What do you make of that? How big a boost for Reform is it, and how big is the damage to Kemi Badenoch as Tory leader?
He's the first of many.
You think so?
Well, we've discussed this before over the past months and months as reform has grown, and I've said consistently that once Tory shadow ministers, former Tory ministers, Tory MPs suddenly see the writing on the wall, they're going to jump because they will see an opportunity to get into government in the future. And actually, it's what reform needs, because
they'll be rewarded by jumping early as well.
Yes, but it's what reform needs, because reform lacks any experience of MPs who've got longevity in Parliament and any experience in government whatsoever. So if they can get people who are shadow ministers, have experience in government, have everything else, they've then got the makings of setting up a new government in the future. If they don't get that, then there's no hope. It's a real danger.
That's it. People say, oh, people who've been in government, they'll be more competent. Well, the people who've been in government for the last 14 years and the ones who've been in government for the last 14 months haven't shown much competence.
But they know how the machinery works, and you have to know how the machinery works. And Nigel Farage is you're not putting a lot of effort into getting to know how the machinery works. He's rebelling against it. And
well, no, but you know why? Because the machinery is going to do everything it can to stop him getting anything done.
But it will, and it'll break him. It'll break him.
That's my worry. The machinery is going to have to be torn down.
That's the trouble. Yeah.
Can I ask you, just before we go to break, I feel it's ridiculous to say this so briefly, but Israel's launched their fresh Gaza ground offensive. BBC keep getting mentioned to eliminate Hamas. They're not going in to kill civilians. There's this terrorist group. They might have done. There was something they did on October the 7th, 2023, but it's so difficult to remember. Certainly the BBC and Sky can't remember. But this is a major escalation of the war. But this is that happened last night. Today, the UN Commission have issued a commission established by the United Nations has reported that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. It's clear there is an intent to destroy the Palestinians in Gaza. And it meets the criteria set down for defining a genocide. This actually, though, the British government had decided a week ago that they weren't. I mean, this is utter, unadulterated nonsense.
Correct. If Israel wanted to destroy the Gazans,
they'd have been gone on October the 8th.
They'd have been gone on October. Israel has got a phenomenal military capability, and they could have eradicated it if they used the ultimate weapon. They could have eradicated Gaza in a quick flash.
No, but we saw what they did with Hezbollah, the pages. We saw what they've done in Iran. We saw what they've done with the rebels. The idea that they can't take on Hamas.
But again, from a targeting perspective, they're giving warnings into individuals saying, move from here because we're going to target it. If you want to destroy the people that are in there, you don't give them warnings. You don't tell them to move. You just
and then they're blamed. But they're forcing them to leave. Yes, because we need to get the Hamas people.
There are two flaws with what Israel's doing at the minute. One is Benjamin Netanyahu from his political position, because he does need the conflict to continue to stay in power, and that is being turned against him and the Israeli people and Israel as state. The second thing is his military objectives, which were to destroy Hamas. You cannot destroy Hamas by purely military means alone, and he hasn't set the objective for the conflict to stop. He needs to do that.
Yeah, that's it. Meeting the actual war aim. 48 hostages still dead and alive, still in Hamas tunnels, used as human shields right now in Gaza. Well, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about everything else that we've got on the news. I mean, it's never ending, this news is today, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, in particular on the failure already of one in, one out. What do you make of Keir Starmer's woes over Mandelson? Do you believe a single word the Prime Minister says? I'd love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
I would disagree with probably everything else he said, but the horror of seeing, well, not just seeing, but knowing that he was killed for something he stood up for and believed in, I think is abhorrent. And I do hope, I gather Oxford at the moment are not thinking of taking action. I think it lowers the respect that many of us have of Oxford University if someone speaking in their name can have a voice.
Let me say this about Danny Kruger. Danny Kruger has not joined the Conservative the Reform Party because he wants to win his seat at the next election. His seat was one of the safest, and he is one of the most thoughtful and least, much to my frustration working for him for a very long time, one of the least political with a small p people in politics. He has done this because he is concerned about the direction of our country. He's concerned that we have one moment to save the country, and that is at the next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 10:29 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Just to let you know, breaking news, the former Conservative MP, former Health Minister in the last government, Maria Caulfield, has defected to Reform UK today. I know not a sitting MP like Danny Kruger, but certainly, you know, like I can say, there are two people not having a good week this week. One is Keir Starmer, the other is very much Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader. We'll bring you more on that as we get it. Let's get straight to your calls, though. One in, one out, abject failure so far. What a surprise. And the Prime Minister's woes over Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein. Davey is on the line. He's in Edinburgh. A very good morning to you, Davey. What do you want to say?
Morning, Julia.
Morning.
Well, where do you start there with Starmer?
I know.
Well, the one in, one out painting will get work, but basically that is a lie for the start.
Yeah.
Starmer and the lies, and to be honest, I would say 90% of the politicians, forget that all these guys get media training.
Yeah.
They actually get taught how to lie to the people that elected them.
Well, the thing is, he thinks we're all fools, and if he says it earnestly, then we're going to believe him, even though the facts are completely contradicting him.
Yeah, for tax-funded media training, whether they claim it through expenses, I don't know. But every one of them get media training, and they're taught how to effectively lie to the actual people that voted for them.
Yeah.
That is a scandal. That is a disgrace.
Yeah.
Again, the freedom of speech thing with them, they hit you with his Nazi thing. Well, if you look at the definition of Nazi in a newspaper, this is what the lefties love. A Nazi is one who doesn't believe in free speech, doesn't believe in alternative political views, doesn't believe in various things. Now, they're actually describing themselves, the left.
Yeah. What do you make of the other big story today? Obviously, the one in, one out, the migrant flight that the Air France plane took off with a £650 bought ticket one way to Paris without a migrant on it.
Well, I would actually fly it because the court costs have got to work out cheaper than the flights.
No, it's mind blowing. Do you think we'll ever deport anybody?
Very unlikely. Not with this lot.
No.
Starmer's a human rights lawyer. Everything by, well, supposedly everything by the book when it suits him.
Yeah.
But, no, very unlikely.
Yeah, very interesting. David, thank you very much for that call. Appreciate it. Tracy is in Hereford. Hello, Tracy. What do you want to say?
Hi, Julia. I don't think there's any way of getting these out of the country unless, I'm not totally sure, even ECHR needs to be done because although we're not seeing it on the main news, a lot of Europe are just closing their borders anyway, and people are of the same opinion as us that we've had enough.
Yep.
But unless the government changes the laws to stop them having any benefits, to stop them being allowed in because they like chicken nuggets or anything like that, we need to change the laws so that these lawyers can't go against it. We need to get the courts changed because they're
the judges.
They're just as corrupt. I just think that to be honest, I keep worrying that I'm going to turn your radio station on and you're not going to be there because you're the only ones that seem to have the free speech at the minute, and I think that's you.
We do try, but it is just extraordinary. It's just got to be an awful phrase, safe place, but like to have, to express the views that people are expressing in the pub and at the at the kitchen table with their families. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I don't even think just changing those laws is going to be enough. I think you need such a sea change in virtually every one of our institutions. I mean, including the courts, the judges, the lawyers, the universities. It's just everywhere.
Yeah, I do, and it started from the school as well, because some of the things that when my daughter comes home, because I was on about the flag to her, and she said, "Oh, Mum, it's racist," and that upset me because me and my husband are ex-army.
Yeah,
and I said,
fought under that flag.
Yeah, I said we had the Union Jack on our uniforms. I said, and when we've lost friends, I said that Union Jack is draped over their coffins. That's not racist.
Yeah, but also she's not getting it from home, so she can only be getting it from school or again or social media again. Tracy, thank you for that, and thank you for your service. I'm sure everyone's will join me in that. A couple of messages. Brenda says nothing will work unless we get out the ECHR again. I think we need to go further than that. Jack says, well, I said if you can't do it in terms of deportations, did they not think this through? Have you met Labour? It was a weak plan anyway. To not even manage to deliver this is a woeful reflection of the Labour administration. Mandy says, cancelled. Is this Mandelson? Is Mandelson messaging me? Cancelled after the threat of legal action, not actual legal action. See how easily the government crumbled? That's because they're not committed to deportations. It's a smokescreen. And Sam says, well, surprised not. Keir Starmer, you're a useless cretin, same as the rest of your cabinet. And Lee says, this country is a laughing stock. 10:34 is the time. Up next, and to talk to Trevor Kavanagh, formerly of The Sun, about Keir Starmer's woes, Mandelson, who I'm sure he knows well, Danny Kruger, and the failure of one in, one out. That's coming up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. For me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, and Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer, joining me on a Tuesday, just for a change. Don't be confused, we haven't hit Thursday yet. Joining me right now to discuss all the big political stories is Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun. A very good morning to you, Trevor.
Good morning, Julia.
Again, I often say this to you, and I always feel a bit rude, but you've been around a long time, you counted them in, you've counted them out. Have you seen anything like the shambles that the Keir Starmer administration is in right now, only 14 months into a premiership? I mean, allowing for Liz Truss's brief 49 days.
Well, yes, I am as old as Mephistopheles, but I think you'd need to be to go back as far as the last time anything like this has happened on the British political landscape. I mean, for Keir Starmer, there is an expression, snafu, situation normal, all screwed up.
Thank you for not using the full terminology. But this is the thing, it's sort of day after day after day, and lots of unforced errors. Let's start though with the one in, one out migrant flight to France, cancelled after some sort of some protests by charity groups. Who cares? That's what they do. And some legal threats, but again, was there actual proper legal action or not? But a government and basically putting out to the newspapers, to the media, we're going to have the migrant flights this week. First one's on Monday afternoon. I mean, no one would have found out about this otherwise, and then it doesn't happen. A classic failure by this government's media strategy, surely.
Well, yes, one of many. I mean, Julia, you knew and said actually on this programme many times that this was never going to work from the very beginning. And so it's turned out, I think, that you weren't alone either.
Yeah.
I mean, every single attempt by this government, if you can actually even call it an attempt to curb illegal migration, has turned out either to be a non-starter or a complete fraud. They're just trying to gaslight the British public.
Yeah.
And the reason is that Keir Starmer and his Attorney General are human rights lawyers. They believe that the world should be running Britain, not the British Parliament or its politicians.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fundamental thing. Meanwhile, we've got all of this fuss over Keir Starmer's, what he told the public last Wednesday at Prime Minister's Questions, and this pooled clip of an interview he did yesterday about what he knew about Peter Mandelson, now Lord Mandelson's relationship, close friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, in particular after Jeffrey Epstein had been convicted of soliciting the prostitution of a 14-year-old girl. Most of us perhaps would think that was someone not only that for their public future job prospects they wouldn't be continue to be friends with, but they wouldn't want to be friends with that person. What with pleading guilty to soliciting a prostitution of a 14-year-old girl. It kind of tells you all you need to know. Yesterday he said, had I known then, at the point when he appointed Mandelson last January to the job of British ambassador to the United States, if I'd known then what I know now, I would never have appointed him. What do you make of that claim?
Well, I think it speaks volumes for everything that Keir Starmer, in quotes, stands for. In fact, what he doesn't stand for. And what he doesn't stand for is truth, veracity, and being straight with the British public. Everybody knew, and again, I'm sure I can quote you as saying something at the time, that Peter Mandelson's track record in government and out has been one of shocking dishonesty. I mean, the man is a very clever politician, but not when it comes to his own interests or those of this country. And he is a corkscrew politician. He cannot walk a straight line without deviating off to some sinister sort of purpose of his own. I think that Starmer has known this from the beginning. And as I've said before, this man is a former director of public prosecutions. Yeah. He is a leading silk, a King's Counsel. Yeah. The fact that he didn't question any of the measures or preparations for Mandelson taking over this absolutely crucial role was a dereliction of duty on his part at the very least. Yeah. And in fact, as it turns out, an act of deceit. Yeah, well, indeed. I mean, Keir Starmer seems to be claiming there's this idea that, you know, Peter Mandelson is such a brilliant operator. He's so brilliant. He was a former EU Trade Commissioner, went off on that gravy train, obviously, after leaving British politics in disgrace twice. And he knows about trade. He'll help us with a trade deal, as if a trade deal is more important than, you know, teenage girls' safety from sexual predators. This is the thing. Keir Starmer, you know, former director of public prosecutions, politician, the Prime Minister of this country, should care about our reputation. Concerns about, you know, the concerns have been raised not only about Peter Mandelson's honesty. I think the man has never deliberately told the truth ever on any occasion. He's never met a billionaire he doesn't like and isn't willing to benefit from. His trade links, his commercial links with China alone, I think, discredited him. But here's my thing. Forget Britain's reputation. Forget all of those things. Keir Starmer is a father. He's got a teenage daughter.
This is a man that he knew for a fact in the public domain, remained friends with a man, close personal friends with a man who had pleaded guilty to soliciting prostitution of a 14-year-old girl, and he was happy to appoint this man to represent our country. What does that mean?
Yes, a man who admitted staying at Epstein's luxury mansion in New York while Epstein himself was actually in jail for procuring young women, young girls.
Yeah,
and you'd think, wouldn't you, that this particular government and this particular party, the Labour Party, would be somewhat alert about the interests of vulnerable young girls, having weathered the Pakistani rape gang scandal.
Where's Jess Phillips? Jess Phillips, hi Jess. Jess, Jess, can you hear me? Jess, a minister for fighting against violence against women and girls. Hello, I'm pretty sure being a 14-year-old girl and being forced to masturbate a grown man, I'm pretty sure that would count.
Yes, and of course Peter Mandelson didn't notice because he's a gay man and apparently now very happy to talk about something that he once got very angry when we disclosed the fact.
Yeah, it is extraordinary, isn't it? And yet another unforced error. What do you make of another top Starmer aide, Paul Ovenden? He was the number 10's director of strategy. Again, I think what most surprised about is that there was a director of strategy. He wasn't at work very often, as far as I can tell, but he's basically number 2 to the chief of staff, Morgan McSweeney. But he's quit over these lewd messages sent in an email about a conversation that other people had about Diane Abbott, basically the snog, marry, avoid game. I mean, you and I worked in the same office at one point in the House of Commons. I'm pretty sure that that's a sort of game that loads of people have played in their offices, and not even, it wasn't even in the workplace, this conversation. It wasn't even to a work colleague, it was a former work colleague. He's forced to resign. What does that tell you?
Well, it tells you everything, like so many things do right now about this government, this Prime Minister, this cabinet, this party of warring factions and disagreements. I think that what you're seeing is the gradual, in fact, rapidly escalating disintegration of the Labour government from the core out. And it isn't going to be the end. I mean, McSweeney himself, I think, is in serious danger. Yeah,
he's not going to last, is he?
I do wonder how my old friend Tim Allen is managing in there as the head of communications. He must be tearing his hair out because there is no way anyone is going to be able to control. This has reached its own momentum, a force that cannot be constrained. We are watching for the British public a tragedy of the disintegration of our democratic system. I hope it's a temporary one and it will be recovered, but it will not be recovered by this government.
Indeed, and I remember saying soon after the election, this is not the people I wanted to be in government, but it's in all of our interest for them to do well. You might go, you want them to fail catastrophically so they can be ousted and we get another government, whether it's from what's Conservatives or Reform in, but you know what? We've got 5 years of this. We're 14 months in. The damage that this can do to our country is extraordinary. I just don't think we're going to survive this situation. Just finally, though, who's having a worse week? Is it Keir Starmer or is it Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, who saw yesterday the very, very first defection of a sitting Tory MP in Danny Kruger, and a serious man. He's been at the higher echelons and a shadow minister. And now today we found out that another former Tory MP, the former Health Minister Miriam Caulfield, has also defected to Reform. Who's having a worse week?
Well, I think Keir Starmer is winning the race to oblivion, but the Tories aren't far behind, are they? I mean, Danny Kruger is a big, big prize for Nigel Farage. He is not one of your rent-a-quote deserters who is basically going to the best option for his own interests. I think that he genuinely thinks that he has the interests of the country at heart. And we are moving to a situation where almost tragically for Kemi Badenoch, I mean, she inherited an impossible situation, and the desertion of Danny Kruger is again only the first of many. I suspect that Farage's party, Reform, will have twice the number of MPs by the end of the year.
Yeah, it's going to be. We'll hold you to that. I think you may well be right. Always so good to talk to you. Former political editor of The Sun, Trevor Kavanagh. Philip Ingram, still with me in the studio. Who do you think's having a worst week? Keir Starmer or Kemi Badenoch?
Oh, I have to
or
agree.
The country.
I have to agree with Trevor. It's Keir Starmer, and the country is definitely having a worse week because our two main political parties are beating themselves to death.
No one seems to be noticing the rest of us going, hi, we've got some problems in this country we'd quite like you to be sorting out.
And none of them are focusing on the real issues.
Yeah.
The Tories are trying to focus on rebuilding the Tories, but there's no leadership coming from Kemi, and Keir Starmer doesn't know what to focus on.
No, I thought you said another word then. I was getting very worried, but yeah. Anyway, 10:47 is the time. Up next, going to talk to the brilliant former police officer Harry Miller, founder of Fair Cop, about the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, saying the police need to stop criminalising offensive tweets. But I mean, sorry, but didn't you put all that into law? Didn't you support all of that? We'll find out whether there's some hope, some sense coming. That's up next. This is Talk.
There's a variety of people there, and they would have been there for their own reasons. And I think it's very unfair to caricature the Unite the Kingdom rally as some kind of far-right march. But I have to say, some of the selection of speakers was somewhat questionable. Now, irrespective of your views of Elon Musk, I'm not sure if he is the right person in terms of providing us with advice to unite the kingdom, considering in last summer's violent disorder, he talked about how civil war is inevitable.
I would disagree with probably everything else he said, but the horror of seeing, well, not just seeing, but knowing that he was killed for something he stood up for and believed in, I think is abhorrent. And I do hope, I gather Oxford at the moment are not thinking of taking action. I think it lowers the respect that many of us have of Oxford University if someone speaking in their name can have a voice.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:51 is the time. Let's talk about our new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. She says the police must stop criminalising offensive comments on social media. The first public comments that the new Home Secretary has made since taking on the job, she says there needs to be a strong line drawn between perfectly legal, fair comment, even if offensive, her words, and illegal actions on the internet. This after 3 of Britain's top police chiefs have called for the Home Secretary to consider changing the law to stop officers unnecessarily policing tweets. They said they want to have a little bit more individual choice and responsibility by the police. But is that really the answer? Because it seems to me they've got discretion right now about whether or not they arrest a shoplifter or someone who's written a hurty tweet, and we know which one they're choosing. Well, let's talk to someone who knows all about this, as someone who's faced charges himself and is a former police officer. He's also founder of Fair Cop, and that's Harry Miller. Good morning to you, Harry.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. What do you make of what the Home Secretary's had to say? Because on the face of it, that sounds fine, that sounds encouraging. But police chiefs asking for more individual officer discretion strikes me as not necessarily a good thing.
Well, police have always had discretion, as you rightly point out, and they've already got the law. We don't need a change in the law. What we need is for the police officers to understand the law. We need police officers to understand that being offensive is not and never has been an offence, and they have no right whatsoever to start interfering with our rights to speak, our rights to be offensive, just because somebody says, "Oh, I've got hurty feeling." The law does not need changing. What needs to happen, by the way, I'm very thankful that Shabana Mahmood has sort of clarified this. What needs to happen is police need to start understanding the law and applying the law. And furthermore, there needs to be fines for police officers who disobey the law. In the same way that you and I would be fined if we do 80 in a 70 zone, then when police officers breach our Article 10 rights, when they clearly and repeatedly breach our right to say something which is not against the law, then those officers, individual officers, need fining.
But often, you're often talking about, an individual PC who's been sent by, they'd be sent by a more senior officer to go and, appear on the doorstep of Alison Pearson, the Telegraph journalist, or your doorstep. They're not just doing it off their own back. So who should we be blaming?
Well, it should be both, actually, because individual officers do have agency. It is the job of an individual officer to serve the Crown, as they swore to do, to the best of their ability. If you've been ordered to go and knock on the door of somebody for saying something, for tweeting something, if I was that officer, I'd be saying, I want that, or I want that as a written order to me before I do anything, because I am not going to breach somebody's Article 10 rights just because you, sir, have told me to do it.
And Article 10 rights enshrine our freedom of expression and belief. Here's the thing, though. We've had before, we had Home Secretaries before the last, we had about 17 of them under the Tories, but Home Secretary saying very, very, very clearly that, that we shouldn't be arresting people and questioning people for non-crime hate incidents, and they shouldn't be being recorded. That was something that came in under the Tories in 2014 in the College of Policing. They're the people who are training people up and approving people and insisting everyone, signs up to all the DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion nonsense. Now, College of Policing were told this by Home Secretary explicitly. They've just carried on doing it as they choose. We're constantly told by the Home Secretary and by the Prime Minister, we don't have any say over what the police do. It's just about the law. So does the Home Secretary saying this mean anything at all? Because it seems to me police chiefs and the College of Policing are doing whatever the hell they want.
Well, they are entirely unaccountable, and the College of Policing in particular, they treat the whole thing about non-crime hate incidents and hate crime incidents. None of it is based upon evidence. When you ask them, where is the body of evidence, the academic evidence, the literature to support this, they haven't got any. It's simply an article of faith which they refused to put down. They operate more like the Vatican than they do a rational, reasonable.
Well, that's it. The justification was given to sort of, if you can stop people saying hateful things, you can stop extremist violence along the way. But there's just no evidence of that at all. I would say exactly the opposite. Actually, people should be allowed to express their feelings in words, and then we can judge them for it. We can tackle it. We know who's thinking a certain way. But again, often we're not talking about someone using horrible racist slurs or the like. We are talking about or inciting violence, that's illegal, and quite rightly. We are talking about someone, people being stopped for saying things like trans women are not women, for expressing concern about, immigration or Islamist extremism. I mean, or grooming gangs. I mean, they don't seem to understand what, as you say, the police often don't seem to understand what the law is themselves, and in sort of questioning people, even if people don't end up getting charged, or they don't end up, or they end up going to, like you did, you go to a court and appeal and you win in the end. Lots of people say it's the process that's the punishment.
It is most definitely the process that is the punishment, and also it's so unpredictable as to what the police will take seriously. For instance, in 2022, PC Lindsay Watson, serving officer with Leicestershire Police, he tweeted that he had he'd won more gold on the Rangers than I have in my rotting teeth. He said that Nazis, and by the way, I was a chief Nazi, should be culled.
He was a trans-identified man, wasn't he?
Exactly. Since then, he's called for the ethical assassination of people like me, Nazis. Now, when this was put to the Crown Prosecution Service, they said, oh, nothing to see here. This is simply an officer exercising his right to freedom of expression. Yeah. So it all depends on who's saying it. And this is why it's so unpredictable. And this is why we say it is two-tier policing. Because if you're on the left, talking at the right, you can get away with pretty much anything. But if you are leaning towards the right, or leaning towards reality or sex-based or what have you, you say something, you're in trouble. I was recently, only last week, I discovered that I have a crime incident recorded against my name. Not a non-crime incident. I now have a criminal record because I wrote in the Critic magazine that my stalker was a man.
Because he is a man.
He is a man, yes, but the police said that misgendering him was contrary to the Online Safety Act because it was spreading false information and had caused Lindsay Watson serious, non-trivial psychological harm. So now, once again, it's Groundhog Day.
But hold on a minute. So you only found out about this. So you weren't interviewed by the police. You weren't cautioned. You didn't plead guilty. You didn't go to court. You've got a criminal. It's on your record.
I was interviewed last November, I think it was, for the crime of misgendering my stalker. I thought they dropped it, but I put in a subject access request and it came back. And yes, of course, they recorded it. They recorded it as a crime, not a non-crime, a crime for the offence of stalking. So they've switched it so that I am now the stalker. This is how crazy we are.
But am I not right in thinking this police officer lost his job?
Yeah, he did.
Because of his harassment of you, is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, he was not only lost his job, but he was placed on the barred list, which means he can never operate in policing again.
Yeah. Very interesting. And categorically, he is a man. I'm not going to say biological male like a lot of people. You're either a man or a woman. Biological male and man are the same thing. Harry Miller, I mean, you've been through it on both sides. I so appreciate you joining us, Harry Miller. There, lots more coming up, including some more breaking news up next. This is Talk.
I can announce.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. Just approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, thank you very much indeed for joining us. So much to talk about. If you have missed any of the show already, well, shame on you. You can go to my YouTube page, Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, and you never get to miss a thing. I don't know, get to. I mean, like, you know, forced to watch it. Coming up in this hour, going to be talking about the madness of the Prime Minister's utterly pathetic and hopeless and ridiculous one-in, one-out migrant deal. Agreed with Macron in June, signed and sealed with the last Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, in July. Supposed to have been starting those deportation flights yesterday. Again, why the government told us before one flight had even taken off with even one migrant on it. But apparently one migrant was due to fly from Heathrow to Paris on an Air France flight on Monday. But the flight was postponed the flight took off, but without any migrants on it because of protests by charities and threats of legal action. Another flight was being planned for today. Breaking news on that front, folks. You'll remember, if you listened to the show yesterday, the Sun's reporter Thomas Godfrey was with us in the studio. Well, he's currently in Paris because he was on the flight that was taking off today. And the second planned one-in, one-out deportation flight was taken off today without, again, a single migrant on board. Is anyone remotely surprised? We'll talk about that in just a moment. Also, we're going to be talking about Donald Trump, who is expected to arrive in the UK this evening to be greeted by the King, taken to Windsor, and then all the ceremonials will start tomorrow, and then meeting with the Prime Minister at Chequers on Thursday, where they're going to be trying to do some more trade talks and the rest. But Donald Trump is expected to go easy on Keir Starmer during the state visit because he understands the Prime Minister is, quote, on the ropes due to intense scrutiny of what he knew and when about Lord Mandelson, the former UK ambassador to the United States' friendship with paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Of course, a bit difficult for Donald Trump because, of course, he was also mates with Jeffrey Epstein. Meanwhile, security arrangements for the US president's state visit have had to be reviewed following the killing of the MAGA influencer Charlie Kirk, police have said. Also, we're going to be talking about Danny Kruger, who became the first sitting Conservative MP to defect to Reform yesterday, declaring that Nigel Farage's party bears the new torch of conservatism. But will he be the first of many? Certainly this morning we've already seen the defection of another former Tory MP, that's Maria Caulfield, the former Health Minister, to Reform. Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun, reckons that we'll see a doubling of Reform's current tally of 5 MPs to 10 by the end of the year. I think it could be more than that. Anyway, I want to hear your thoughts on all of the big stories today. In particular, how on earth do you think Keir Starmer is doing over his one-in, one-out deal? The fact that we've had 2 days, 2 flights, not a single migrant out. So it's, 0 out, 2 flights out, but yeah, exactly. But joining me today, by the way, is Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, who's come a couple of days early, just because he couldn't be away from us any longer.
I just turned up. Yeah.
You just turned up. Oh God, Philip's
he's
turned up. We'll have to
get
put him on air. Usual rules. Mind you, that's my entire career. Julia's here. I guess we'll put her on air again. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on Keir Starmer's one-in, one-out deal. It's just embarrassing. It's a humiliation for our country. But this tells us, nobody can get rid of these people under the current system, and it's all Keir Starmer's human rights mates who are the problem. But give us your thoughts. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. All together now. Text costs 1. Standard network rate message. Right, all that spiel out the way. Love to hear your thoughts on Keir Starmer and Peter Mandelson as well. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Philip Ingram, great to have you here still. Thank you very much. That breaking news we just got handed just at the top of the hour that yet a second one-in, one-out deportation flight. So it's a commercial Air France flight from Heathrow to Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, left once again with no asylum seekers, channel migrants, illegal migrants, what are we calling them this week, on board because of yet more attempts by lawyers to stop these deportations. You've got to laugh or else you'd cry.
How much did we spend on those empty rows of seats at the front of the aircraft? So they tend to be the business class seats.
We understand that certainly the last last-minute flight, seats for that flight was 650 quid each.
Well, I can
650 quid each.
I can confidently say today there will be no one sent from France across to the UK, so we're not getting any in. But that's because the weather in the Channel is terrible, so they won't get no crossings are coming.
Yeah.
But the government will take that as a success. It's government policy proven. There's been no crossings.
I mean,
today.
I was saying even with the Tories, and there was if you had a good day, it's to do with the weather.
Yes,
the number of people. We are not in control. The
not in control of it
Neptune has got more control over our borders than does the Home Office or Border Forces and the like. But this is, I mean, look, it was we talked a little bit earlier, didn't we, about those Rwanda flights, and there was that plan to put people on the flights to Rwanda, and just that plane sat there. Was it Stansted or Luton Airport? It just sat there on the runway, and then one by one these guys were taken off. They haven't even been able to deport some people on commercial flights. Convicted, gang rapist who was supposed to be deported, and then you get a bunch of liberal lily-livered idiots on the plane going, no, I refuse to sit down until you take the poor black man in hand. That's what it was. Oh, he must be a victim. You know those type. I live around those people.
That particular example, he then went off to rape another child.
Yeah, funny that. But and again, I want that woman prosecuted. But again, the answer to that is take her off the plane and then we're just a sodding joke of a country. We cannot deport people who've got no right to be in our country.
Yeah, there's something I don't understand here. In France, in Italy, in Germany, they're all subject to European human rights legislation the same way that we are. They get them onto flights and send them back. What is the interpretation that's going on in the courts in the UK, or with all of these different do-gooders that are stopping this from happening? And that is perfectly within the remit of the government to fix, because the law is set in Parliament, and the government, with its vast majority, could change the law like that.
Oh, it's very, very. It's just painful. It really is. Is anyone surprised though? I mean, is anyone surprised that they haven't been able to do this? Because I'm not. I mean, let's face it. The Prime Minister's probably got other priorities right now, saving his own skin. A lot of Labour MPs, not just privately but publicly. A lot of even Labour ministers, certainly privately, are now saying, Keir Starmer is a goner. He's not going to last. He's just not competent. He's not inspiring. He's got no leadership skills. He's got no strategy, no plan. I mean, nothing. I mean, the man is an empty vessel. He's just Brill cream over an empty vessel. That's all he is.
I'm sorry, he's done something hugely better than the last Tory government. He has managed to create a disaster in 14 months, whereas the Tories, it took them 14 years.
Fair point. He works quickly at being incompetent. That's good. But now the latest pressures. I mean, when he's got an aide who's quit over these X-rated messages about Diane Abbott. Someone who was reporting things that were said by other people, playing a silly game. Snog, marry, avoid, but it was a little bit of a ruder version than that, about a well-known MP. It wasn't racist, it wasn't misogynist. This person was saying, oh God, it was really offensive, but it was very, very funny. He's Number 10's Director of Strategy, Paul Ovenden. I mean, again, I think we're all surprised there was a Director of Strategy. He must have been off sick quite a lot, is all I can say. And he's quit over these messages, again, because the fund auditor's not allowed to say anything. I know that Labour people would demand a Tory in the same circumstances would quit, or a Reform person, or that I would have to quit. I know they would do that, but we should be better than that. I don't think this person should quit. In the same way, that idiot who's the president-elect of the Oxford Union, of which I used to be a member as a former alumna of Oxford, there's horrific comments about Charlie Kirk. There's likely there's going to be a vote that's going to force him out of the Oxford Union, but that'll be a vote. He won't have, he forced out in a sort of like, someone wags their finger. Decision by the people who, using the rules, that's fine. But he's not going to be sent down by Oxford University. And quite rightly, people are allowed to say offensive things and not have their whole life ruined. I'm sorry, that's how I feel about freedom of speech. Although it doesn't seem that an awful lot of other people agree with me on this. But Starmer's big issue right now is not someone saying something offensive. It's someone having a relationship with somebody who has done awful, horrific, not just offensive, but criminal things. And this is what Keir Starmer knew and when of Peter Mandelson, now Lord Mandelson, and as was the US, I keep saying ambassador, the UK ambassador to the US, appointed by Keir Starmer earlier this year, what he knew of Peter Mandelson's relationship with the convicted paedophile billionaire Jeffrey Epstein before he hired him for the job and before he backed him, saying he had full confidence in the ambassador at PMQ's last Wednesday afternoon, despite the fact virtually everything we know now was already in the public domain. The emails, love Petey, I love you sort of emails that were released by Bloomberg earlier in the week. And Harry Cole did an interview with Peter Mandelson. He said they were going to be worse. He must have come out. A lot of that information was already in the government's possession when the Prime Minister went to the to the Commons and to the public and expressed confidence in this man. But now he's saying, and let's launch a list of a quick clip. Now he's saying that, he kind of, wouldn't have appointed him in the first place. Here's what the Prime Minister had to say in a pooled clip yesterday.
Obviously, the diplomatic post of American ambassador, really important post. And Peter Mandelson, before he was appointed, went through a due diligence process. That's the propriety and ethics team, went through a process. And therefore, I knew of his association with Epstein. But had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him.
Had I known then what I know now, I would never have appointed him. That's not true. That's a lie.
It's not true, because MI5 have said as part of the vetting process they couldn't vet Mandelson, and from what I understand the reports I've read, MI6 raised red flags at him going in and going through the processes because of the links that he had elsewhere, whether they couldn't get the detail or could get the detail.
Close friends with Epstein after he was convicted, and also his links to China.
They will have known the detail, and the Prime Minister will have been briefed the
He'd
detail.
resigned twice over financial scandals.
Yeah. So Keir Starmer, former Director of Public Prosecution, a barrister who was so good that he knew how to smash the gangs because he'd smashed terrorist organisations, didn't know how to follow up on these sorts of accusations.
It's just the whole thing is just
it
a joke.
Smells.
I mean, there was nothing convincing.
No. Nothing
convincing about that clip. Tetchy, arrogant.
Well, his body language said lying.
Yeah, how dare you? How dare you ask me about this? Incompetence as well. It's not just, but also, what is it? What hold does Peter Mandelson have over all these people? I mean, Peter Mandelson, a man, well, this is the thing. He's, considered, the Machiavellian master of the dark arts. Apparently, absolutely crucial in Labour's '97 victory. I'm not entirely so sure. I think he's genuinely. I think he's genuinely a dark soul and a nasty little piece of work. He's never met a billionaire he doesn't like. I think he sold his soul to the devil a long time ago. He definitely knows where all the bodies are buried. Now, the interesting thing about Keir Mandelson is he now feels wronged by Keir Starmer. Because he was sacked, he wasn't allowed to, wasn't met with first. He feels that he wasn't backed up, even though, of course, this is all his own fault. Every one of his scandals every one of his resignations and his job losses has been his own fault. But he's a very angry and bitter man, and he's a very, very vengeful man. I have no doubt at all he's going to aim now to do a heck of a lot of damage, which will be fun to watch.
Well, it's not all his own fault. If he's told Keir Starmer beforehand what's in there, and Keir Starmer
By
knows...
all accounts, he was, this phrase, economical with the truth.
Yes, but if he...
What was in the public domain?
Exactly. If he knew that Keir Starmer knew the real truth behind it, and they had this dancing game of...
No, but I don't even think you have to see the emails between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein to know that he should... There is nothing that we didn't know in January when he was appointed by the Prime Minister, because, he knows all about trade as a former EU Trade Commissioner, that would not have said to you, this man is totally unsuited to any job representing this country and to be in a position of trust with our most significant economic and security and defence ally.
Starmer will have known that. Mandelson, if he believed that Starmer knew everything about Mandelson and still appointed him, will now be even more aggrieved, going, actually, you knew, mate, and I'm sorry, you've now thrown me under the bus because you're trying to save yourself,
my
and I'm going to throw you under the bus.
It's not even about the politics now. It's not even about the security of our country.
It's the morality.
It's the morality. Jeffrey Epstein in 2006, so long before the friendship continued years on, even while he was in prison. We understand, certainly Mandelson has never denied staying at his home. I think he had the most expensive house in New York. I wonder why you were, Mandelson, he's a very rich man himself. You can't afford a hotel, mate. He stayed at Jeffrey Epstein's house, we understand. This is after Jeffrey Epstein had been charged and pleaded guilty to 2 charges involving the solicitation and the prostitution of a 14-year-old girl. A child, okay? Keir Starmer's the father of a teenage daughter.
Yep.
He's got a teenage daughter. I've got a teenage daughter. I know what a 14-year-old girl looks like. I've watched enough of the documentaries and seen the images of a lot of these young women. Now, they were girls. They were children.
They're children.
They were children. How do you, as supposedly a good father and a good man, a moral man, Mr. Human Rights Lawyer, Mr. Director of Public Prosecutions as well, how do you think that a man who stayed in the house with, stayed friends with, a man who pleaded guilty? I mean, by the way, there were 20 other charges, more charges they could have brought against him, but they didn't bring them at the time because it was a plea deal. He was already raping girls at that point. We know that for a fact, okay? How could he think that Peter Mandelson was an appropriate person with the right judgment, the right model, to represent our country in America? And I said this at the time, he was an inappropriate appointment, it was wrong, and this would come back to bite them. But how do you as a father say, yeah, you seem like a good guy? He's all right, he's gay. He wouldn't have been one of the men who was using these poor trafficked girls, these sex slaves on Pedo Island. No, he wouldn't have been. But do you think he didn't know and he was good friends? Because everyone else seemed to know.
What we're hearing out of Keir Starmer is the same. Whenever it comes to deal with paedophiles, it's the same excuse out of the same excuse book. It didn't cross my desk. That information I didn't know of at the time. Remember when he was Director of Public Prosecutions and all the furore around
grooming gangs and
grooming gangs and paedophiles associated with the BBC and elsewhere that he is trying to distance himself from? It was because it never crossed his desk. Well, the information didn't cross his desk about Peter Mandelson. He used the same excuse. Savile, Mandelson, they're all paedophiles. Savile, Mandelson's association with Epstein.
Yeah.
Epstein and Savile were both paedophiles.
Yeah, it's just extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, so we know Keir Starmer's having a bad week. I mean, he just has a bad week after bad week. But we also know someone else is having a very bad week this week, and that is Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, who is under huge amounts of pressure after yesterday Danny Kruger became the first sitting Tory MP to defect to Reform. Followed today actually by Maria Caulfield, a former Tory MP. We've already had, a few other people who have defected, but they're not, Jake Berry and brain's gone. Come on, who am I thinking of? Who spoke at the Tory at the Reform conference? Brain's gone. Anyone listening? Okay. Anyway, you'll know who I mean. Other ex-Tories.
She sang.
Yeah.
I know exactly.
No, that's Andrea Leadsom. No. She's now a mayor. But yes. The former MPs moving over is one thing. A sitting MP choosing to move, but someone who was a speechwriter for Cameron, political secretary to Boris Johnson, who's a thinker, who led a group, led Jedrick's campaign for the leadership. Him moving over, and I have to say we had Sam Armstrong, who worked on that campaign for Robert Jenrick, in the studio yesterday. I've never seen him look shell-shocked or lost for words. They had no idea. College Political had no idea this was happening. How many more do you think are to defect? How big a damage is this?
I think it's huge damage, but I think it's something that is entirely predictable. And as Reform grows and grows and grows in the polls, we're going to see more former MPs, more former ministers, and an increasing number of current MPs and potentially current shadow ministers. We might even see some from Labour jumping ship to go to Reform, recognising that to continue the political career, that's a path they go in on. Reform need people with experience. They need to have people who know how to work Whitehall before they can change it. It's great having all these policies.
I don't think Danny Kruger's actually been a minister. By the way, Nadine Dorries, that was the former... literally on the tip of my tongue. Sorry, Nadine. I don't think Danny Kruger... I mean, he worked in it, but he wasn't like a minister, I think, in government. I'm pretty sure he was a backbencher.
But he's been in Parliament for a longer period of time. He can see where things go right and things go wrong.
Is there any evidence that all these people, I mean, Labour are people who are competent, they've been in government. A lot of these people who've been brought back in to help Keir Starmer's government, a lot of the people who've been in the last 40 years Tory government, they've been in government for a hell of a long time.
But they don't want to change.
Well, no. But is there any evidence that having that knowledge makes you good at governing?
No, but they don't want to change. That's the trouble. They just want to get into power and go and keep the sausage machine going the way the sausage machine's always gone. This is where Reform is slightly different. Reform, in their talk, are saying we want to change the sausage machine. The sausage machine will fight back and that's the civil service. And the civil
The
service
blob.
have got a lot more power. But you need to have people who understand that, so you know where the weaknesses are, so you can attack into it. Whether, if Nigel Farage gets into government, he will actually maintain that we're going to change the sausage machine into something else or not, we'll only find out when he gets in.
Is anyone else hungry now for sausage? Whenever people talk about food, I'm like, oh, sausage sarnie.
I had a sausage sarnie for breakfast.
Shame on you. Let's also talk, we're going to be talking about Donald Trump's visit in a few moments with Greg Spencer from Republicans overseas. Let's talk about Israel. Now, we know that Israel has launched this fresh Gaza ground offensive to eliminate Hamas, major escalation of the war, something actually IDF leaders have actually objected to. On the grounds of, are the military aims achievable? This is because we know there are Hamas operatives and Hamas terrorists are still in Gaza. They have still got hostages in Gaza. By the way, Hamas barely mentioned in any of the mainstream media reports about this. It's just nasty, nasty, evil Israel going in and committing genocide, against these civilians. In fact, they've given loads of warnings and specifically asking, leave these buildings, we're going to bomb these buildings. Today we've also had the UN Commission, a report by them, a commission established by the United Nations, claiming that it is clear that there is an intent to destroy the Palestinians in Gaza, and that Israel is guilty of committing genocide in Gaza. Now, the Israeli Foreign Ministry has categorically rejected this distorted and false report, and they called for this particular commission to be destroyed. This is the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory. I mean, I'm pretty sure
very independent.
It's a bit of a giveaway. There's no doubt at all. We've seen from UNRWA, we've seen from UN, we've seen from ICC, ICJ, all the different courts. They're all captured international institutions. Huge amounts of big Arab money, Qatar, China, Russia, they're all pushing this with their little satellite states, the South Africas, the Mauritius, everyone else. Everyone's in on this. Don't forget to sign up and tick this box. The UN is a body that put a Saudi Arabian representative as a chair of a body on women's rights. I mean, do one, frankly, the UN, do one. I don't care what you think. But you're a military man. You've been in war. How is it that Israel is clearly a fantastically well trained, very, 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 hugely funded, huge amounts of military hardware, huge tactical ability. They've been able to take on Hezbollah with the Patriots, take on Iran with these tactical moves, what they've been doing in Gaza. Why is it that they are uniquely bad, it would appear, at committing genocide? Because I would have thought that the Israeli government, were they to want to kill everyone in Gaza and the Palestinian people there, the 2 million population there, they could have done it by, October the 8th.
They could have done it easily. And if you want to kill everyone in a particular area because you're going to invade it, you don't send a warning and say, please get out because we're going to attack it at this time, which is what they did. The Israeli army, the professional army, is exceptionally well trained. They're relying on a lot of reservists that are coming in.
They're kids.
And the
They're
trouble is with a lot of the reservists that are coming in, that's where you get people who are not as well professionally trained, and that's where you get things that will happen that are the sorts of things you would not expect from a professional
poor judgment,
army.
mistakes.
But there are three issues here. One, Netanyahu, from a political perspective, is trying to save his own skin, and that does not bode well whenever it comes to justifying the war. The second one is you cannot destroy Hamas from a military perspective. And the third thing is, if Hamas wanted to completely undermine Israel's legitimacy in the conflict, they'd release all the hostages tomorrow. If Israel then continued with its fight to try and destroy Hamas, they're in a better position legitimately to try and say that Israel is trying to destroy the Palestinian
I don't
people.
think they are. I think they've got every right. And again, I always say to people, what would be a proportionate response if a terrorist organisation that runs effectively a small mini country next to you did what they did on October the 7th? I know exactly what our country would do. I know exactly what America would do, and I think it's and every other country. I think it's absolutely absurd holding Israel itself to a higher standard when actually they are, in terms of the number of civilian deaths there are. People go 65,000 deaths. A, Hamas figures. B, in war, we still don't even know how many people died in the Iraq war. So I don't know where people are getting that from. People are putting out figures like 1 million people have died. I mean, seriously, made up stuff. But also, crucially, more bombs have been dropped on Gaza than people have died, as claimed by Hamas. That does not suggest to me indiscriminate killing of random civilians. I mean, those simple facts alone tell you it's not happening. The population of Gaza has increased because births and everything has increased since October the 7th, 2023. That is all I'm just saying is Israel were committing genocide, and they would have to be intent to do so. There clearly isn't. I can honestly say they are uniquely rubbish at this one particular act.
100%.
When they are not IDF. Not known for their incompetence. But anyway, 11:27 is the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and all the other topics. Going to take your calls coming in on Keir Starmer and Mandelson and anything else you want to talk about. One in, one out. No one out at all. No one even on 2 planes now that have left to go back to Paris. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000 to have yours say. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:31 is the time. We're going to get to your calls, I promise you, in the next hour. Do apologise to those people waiting on the line. But that breaking news we've had in the last half an hour about a second day in which flights have taken off from Heathrow, Air France flights, to Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris without a single Channel migrant deportee on board. That news broke this morning from no less than Thomas Godfrey, news reporter at The Sun, who was on our show yesterday, sitting in the studio telling us about these deportation flights. Well, he was on one of those flights and he's now talking to us live from Charles de Gaulle Airport, where not a single deported migrant has actually arrived. Very good morning to you, Thomas.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you. I don't think this is really much of a surprise to anyone paying attention to this story.
Not really, I'm afraid. Yesterday's flights in the afternoon didn't go ahead. There were last-minute representations from some of the asylum seekers' lawyers and also left-wing activists and campaign groups putting pressure on not only the Home Office but Air France as well. And it seems this morning it's a similar story. There was at least one asylum seeker we know of who was due to be removed on the 9 a.m. flight from Heathrow to Charles de Gaulle this morning. He was sent a message over the weekend telling him that he would be on that plane, but yet this morning there were no asylum seekers on the flight at all. It ran as normal as a passenger plane.
How did you know? How did you know there wasn't anyone on board who was an asylum seeker?
Well, when people are being deported from Britain, they are generally accompanied by Border Force staff or staff from Mighty, the agency. These asylum seekers were being housed and detained, the 155 who had been put in the pot, as it were, for processing to be sent back to France. They were housed at the Harmondsworth Removal Centre about 10 minutes away from Heathrow Airport. And so there were no Mighty staff, no Border Force staff on board, but there were conspicuously some pairs of seats left empty, and when the doors closed there were actually a couple of rows left empty. Obviously some people moved into those empty seats to give themselves some more space after the plane took off, but for the most part there were a few empty seats. We were told actually at Heathrow during boarding that it was a fully booked flight, that it would be packed to the rafters with people trying to go to Paris, but it seems that those not on board this morning were the migrants who had earlier been told they would be removed from Britain as part of this one-in, one-out scheme, which, as of now, looks like a bit of a failure.
Do you think? I mean, for those who are watching on YouTube or the connected device, you'll see we've got a picture of you from the plane next to the seats. Looks very, very nice indeed. I think there were seats at the front of the plane, quite expensive seats as well. So I hope the Home Office has bought fully flexible tickets. Otherwise, we paid. I mean, what did you have to pay for your ticket?
Well, I can tell you, if you tried to book onto that flight yesterday, as we did, it would have cost upwards of £650 per person, and that is a very last-minute ticket. For
no Ryanair or EasyJet flights there, no Wizz Air. I mean, they had to go on Air France, the national carrier, but there we are. I'm sure that was part of the deal that Macron did. I mean, look. Really, what's so interesting is the fact that the government decided to put out into the media, didn't they, effectively, that there were going to be deportation flights within a matter of weeks. And then they said, basically we found out they were going to be on Monday. Why did they even say that until after the first flight has taken off with these people?
You'd think that they would wait and wait and wait and then let the good news out of the bag, as it were. That isn't what's happened. I think what may have happened instead is that they have underestimated the scale of some of the left-wing and liberal lawyers' abilities to frustrate them.
That's weird, though, because they're all their mates. They go to dinner parties with this lot.
Well, look, from what we've been told, we know that several asylum seekers had sort of last-minute representations made, but may have bought them an extra night or an extra 2 nights in the UK because of some of those absolute last-gasp human rights claims, which they believe they have to avoid being flown back across the channel. And it's also interesting to look at the French perspective of this, because sources in the Interior Ministry in France have previously told The Sun that they regard this deal, which is a pilot scheme, as experimental. And they've reserved the right to terminate this agreement at any time. And actually, if it's not working out, the French government are well within their rights under this deal put together to basically just say, well, it's not working for you, it's not working for us. What's the point in doing it at all?
No mercy. I mean, it kills me. We also have a veto over who we get to send back. So we can't send back the worst ones. We've got concerned about, war criminals or rapists, although, of course, these people are detained immediately on arrival. But equally, they get to choose who gets sent to us. I mean, the whole thing is an absolute farce. It really, really is. And incredibly damaging for the government because there's much fated policy. Here's the thing, though. Even if they'd got 50 on, if they managed to get 50 of these migrants on board this week and then another 50 turned up because they said 1 in, 1 out with a maximum of around 50 a week under this pilot, that still wouldn't make even a dent in the huge numbers coming over the channel and the huge numbers who were sitting in hotels and other accommodation all paid for by us.
32,000 asylum seekers in hotels in the UK. To even get near driving that number down, they need a deterrent. Well, there's no deterrent if no asylum seekers are actually going on the flights. If the flights take off with nobody on them, then what's the point? You're buying a plane ticket, you're putting out all of it out into the press, and then it's simply not happening. And so people will keep coming across.
Absolutely
I think
extraordinary.
that realisation may be starting to set in Whitehall. It's now been 2 days without a flight going. There are none for the rest of the day that they could be put onto, and it will be maybe a case of trying again tomorrow and seeing what happens then.
Well, you enjoy a nice little day out in hopefully sunny Paris, and we'll speak to you again when this ever happens. So thank you so much for joining us. That's Thomas Godfrey, news reporter at The Sun, live from Charles de Gaulle Airport. Having been on that flight, 650 quid. Every single aspect of this story makes me so cross, Philip Ingram.
Oh, the one thing Keir Starmer will be celebrating is there's no PMQs tomorrow because it's party conference season, because he would be taken to pieces over this and over the continuing failures in those that are supporting him and everything else. You couldn't make this up.
You couldn't. And you couldn't. I'm also like, we're really surprised there were human rights lawyer objections. No, really? Oh, have you been paying attention? Have you read a paper in the last 5 years? 11:38's time. We're going to take a break. We're going to talk about another big event happening this week. Of course, that's the arrival tonight of one Donald Trump. So how's that going to go? That's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:40 is the time. Philip Ingram still with me now. Delighted to be joined in the studio by Greg Swenson once again. He's chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. A very good morning to you. Of course, we're going to see a very senior Republican overseas tonight, and that is Donald Trump. He's going to be arriving in Stansted. Yes, slightly but higher in the pay grade. But he's going to be arriving at Stansted Airport. He's going to be greeted by the King, taken to Windsor, and then all the pomp and ceremony, the stuff he really wants, that expected the guard, or that is going to be taking place tomorrow. We are told, though, certainly in terms of security, huge. I mean, the level of security that any political leader gets, but certainly for Donald Trump, it's off the scale. He brings the beast, the big limo with him and the like. He's been kept away largely from the public, but we're told in the wake of the tragic killing of Charlie Kirk, a big MAGA influencer, big Trump supporter and aide, that the security is now gone up another level.
Yeah, it's definitely, I imagine, elevated, but it really started to elevate after Butler, Pennsylvania. I mean, I went to Turnberry and it was full lockdown. I mean, just to get through security took an hour. They check the car, they take all your luggage out, go through your bag. I mean, it's pretty intense. Got to keep hands out of your pockets. I mean, it's pretty intense.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, he's going to be meeting with the King, with the Queen and Prince William and Kate. Of course, he's very, very excited about having the glamour there as well. He knows he wants the attention, he wants the publicity. But it's all come at rather a difficult time, has it not, in relation in particular to the withdrawal of our UK ambassador to the United States, Lord Mandelson, over specifically his close friendship with the paedophile billionaire late Jeffrey Epstein. But of course, Donald Trump was also very friendly with him. What do you make of how damaging that is for not just Keir Starmer, but also for Donald Trump?
Well, I think very little for the president. I think the King had a good point. It's bad timing or inconvenient timing or whatever he said.
That's rather inconvenient.
Yeah, I mean, but look, it's apples and oranges, right? I mean, the president, like many people, was friends with,
What's not to like about the billionaire Jeffrey Epstein now, who throws good parties?
And had a nice jet, I'm told. So I think it's not perfect, but I can guarantee you this. If there was anything unseemly in the records or the Epstein files about President Trump, the Democrats and the compliant media would have leaked it last October.
We're told, Donald Trump said he was going to release the Epstein files and then has chosen not to. That, of course, that's created an awful lot of conspiracy theories. There's no doubt at all they knew each other. There were big names on the New York, rich people's scene. Of course they knew each other. Yeah. He claims that he didn't write this birthday book, this drawing with his signature, Donald Trump, as the pubic hair of a naked woman. He claims this is all a lie. But look, Donald Trump, with all due respect to him, he lies 5 times before breakfast and doesn't even know about it.
It's hyperbole sometimes.
Let's call it hyperbole, but come on. But he says, look, he fell out with Jeffrey Epstein many years ago over him poaching staff from Mar-a-Lago, including, we're told, Virginia Roberts became Virginia Giuffre. I mean, how long ago was he friends with him? Yeah, I think it was, I can't remember the year exactly, but well before Epstein was indicted and tried in Florida, well before that, he had actually thrown him out of the club. Yeah. And so that's the cut-off point. They're friends, but as soon as all this stuff came to light, they were no longer friends. Yeah. So do you think is Donald Trump and his team, are they worried about this being a big issue in the news while he is here?
Sure. I mean, if it's a distraction, yes. And I think if he, probably he's going to get asked about it in press conferences, and maybe he just says next topic, or maybe he addresses it quickly, but it's surely a distraction.
And there won't be a press conference until the Thursday evening. It's all the ceremony in Windsor on pretty much entirely on Wednesday, and then big banquet and deliberately to keep away from sort of London protesters, much easier to control around Windsor. And then on Thursday he's meeting with the Prime Minister at Chequers. We're hoping there's going to be some deals, trade going to be talked about, AI and the like. What are we hoping to get out of this on either side?
I mean, we haven't really seen much, and I think they're waiting for that kind of announcement. Maybe they'll do a little press release beforehand, but I think that the president just wants to talk about trade, maybe more details on the trade deal. So this is an opportunity for him to enjoy the pageantry and the excitement, but then maybe get down to business at Chequers. And I think, you might expect some discussions or criticisms from the president or the vice president about free speech, about the boats, about electricity costs here, and those aren't out of contempt or the big brother yelling at the little brother. They really care about this country. I mean, it's our closest ally, and it's our
he
closest
is a big
friend.
Anglophile, isn't he?
And he's a huge Anglophile. He loves this
I don't know what the equivalent of Scottishophile is. I don't know, but there we are. One final thing. I mean, he's not going to be spending. I think he's staying at Wingfield House, isn't he? The ambassador's residence, great security there. That's in London. Last time he was actually staying in London. I always know when he's there because I get the helicopters going over my garden. Very noisy. But Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, then still the London mayor, they had a battle of words. In fact, I think they had a battle of words on social media before they'd even got off the plane. But he gave permission for there to be this huge, big baby blimp in Parliament Square. Are we expecting protests like that?
I don't think so. And if there are, who cares? It's nonsense, and I don't think it bothers the president. And look, what happened in Turnberry was phenomenal. The lefty media was covering the protests, which are typically paid protesters and agitators backed by Soros. That's just me. But they didn't report on the absolute crowds that were cheering him between the airport and the Turnberry Club. People on the streets, totally unorganized, just, you know,
turning up,
walking out of their homes and going to the street to cheer him on.
Well, we shall see what happens. He's arriving tonight. Greg Swenson, really appreciate you joining us. Hope you get to go to some of the banquets and some of the parties. You invited to anything?
All of them.
Well played, sir. Well played. This is this is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Up next, we're going to go live to College Green outside Westminster to talk to former Conservative Government Minister Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. Going to find out, is he thinking of defecting to reform? Stay tuned.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's also joining me. I get his results for what my next guest has to say. And this is in relation to, well, the big announcement yesterday from Reform UK's leader, Nigel Farage, that a sitting Tory MP, the first sitting Tory MP, would be defecting to Reform. He was Danny Kruger. Said basically in a speech at a press conference that the Conservative Party are over and the torch has been passed to Reform. It's been followed today by a former Tory MP, Maria Caulfield, a former Health Minister. She's defected. Follows others like Jake Berry, a former party chair, and Nadine Dorries, again, other non-sitting MPs, perhaps looking for a future career. But certainly Danny Kruger's defection has absolutely shocked the party. Today, Kemi Badenoch has acknowledged her party is having, she says, a tough and bumpy time. Well, let's talk right now about this with former Conservative Government Minister Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. A very good morning to you, Sir Jacob.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. So, are you going to defect to reform?
I've answered that many times, but perhaps I should ask you a question. Are you going to defect to GB News, where you'd been enormously popular and
Thank
fit
you very
right
much.
in?
It's not about me. Are you going to defect to reform?
It's always about you. The programme's entirely devoted
Jacob,
to you. It's your common
We've got
sense.
very short time.
So could you...
Would you mind answering the question?
Yeah, I've answered this question lots of times. Yeah, but will you answer mine?
No, I won't.
You answer
no,
mine,
I'm
I'll
not
answer
going
yours.
to.
That seems
No,
a
I'm
good
here
way.
at talk. Thank you very much. I'm very, very happy here. Thank you very much. I've been here since
Forever,
day
and
one.
you'd never change.
Jacob.
You'd never change.
Jacob, this is silly. This is silly.
No, just like to know, you'd never change. You'd never jump ship for some huge amount of money.
When you say you've answered that question many times about reform, implying that, well, of course the answer will be the same.
I'm staying in the Tory party.
You're staying in the Danny Kruger, I imagine.
I'm staying in the Tory party.
Okay, Danny Kruger, I imagine...
But I'm staying in the Tory party. I just wanted to know what you might do.
Okay. Danny Kruger, I'm sure if he was asked even the day before whether he would defect to reform, he would probably have said no. We know he didn't tell some of his closest allies, Robert Jenrick, other people who worked on the campaign for Robert Jenrick, whose campaign manager he was for the Tory leadership. A lot of people didn't know. How many other Tories do you believe there are sitting MPs who may well be considering defecting?
I don't know. Indeed, when I heard Maria Caulfield had joined this morning, I thought she'd joined ages ago. So one sometimes forgets precisely who's done what. But what I'm interested in, what I think is so important, is that the right unites, that we have a really dreadful Labour government. It's getting everything wrong. It's mired in sleaze. It's suffering from resignations. Migration is out of control. The economy is going down the tubes. And the right needs to come together to defeat this, to have proper Conservative government. And what Danny said that I think is right is that though the Conservative Party may have its problems, conservatism, Conservative ideas are very strong. So I'd appeal to people to put labels aside, put pride aside, and work together for the much greater national interest, which is to get a proper Tory government in.
OK, so you're saying you don't need to defect to reform, you just need to have Conservatives willing to ally with reform at the next election to put in a Conservative government. Why would Reform UK, way ahead in the polls from your party, OK, you may have a lot more MPs, you know, 115 more, I think, MPs than Reform currently have, even with Danny Kruger's defection. Why would Reform say, yeah, we'll do a deal with the Tories when they are so far ahead in the polls right now and you are so far behind?
Because they're not ahead by enough. Now, they may be ahead to win an election, but if you look what's gone wrong, one of the things that's gone wrong for Labour is they've got a huge majority on a small share of the vote. So they have a majority but not a mandate. What we need for conservatism at the next general election is both. And that means getting 45 to 50% of the popular vote. Together we can achieve that. Divided, the best one of us will be likely to get about 30%. So that's why we need to work together. But there is also something, if you're a Conservative in any sense, and Danny clearly is, that you believe in maintaining traditions and institutions, preserving them while reforming them, rather than destroying and having a year zero. The year zero approach is a very left-wing approach, and therefore to maintain a party that dates back at least to Queen Anne, arguably to the Civil War, is, I think, a worthy thing to be doing.
OK, the thing is, though, your party and your brand, you're damaged goods. Everything you just said a couple of answers ago about Keir Starmer's government, you know, mired in sleeve, immigration out of control, incompetence, like most voters would say, well, yeah, and you were exactly the same. You talked a good game, but you didn't deliver on any of the things you said you would do. You had mass uncontrolled immigration, horrific amounts of sleaze, frankly, with a man, Boris Johnson, who you were supporting until his last breath in office. Absolutely failed on many institutions, highest taxes we'd seen in goodness knows how many decades. Why on earth for someone right now saying they want a right-wing government, want to get rid of Labour, say, yeah, let's go back to the people who messed it up in the first place, rather than a new party who've been saying the same thing for years and giving them a try?
Well, they haven't been saying the same thing for years because they haven't existed for years.
But whether they're called, whether Nigel Farage is called Reform or the Brexit Party,
No. it's really important because Reform in its previous guises had no policy other than leaving the European Union, which the Conservative Party delivered. So if that's what you're talking about, that was done by Boris Johnson. It was delivered by the Conservatives. So they didn't have any policies other than that of any merit at all. And Richard Tice has already said quite clearly that the manifesto they stood on in 2024 is now irrelevant. So they don't have any policies beyond
all
the Brexit one,
manifestos
which is
are
done by the
irrelevant
Tories.
after an election, apart from the person who wins.
That's a fair point. But you can't say they've got all these policies that I'm talking about. Most of them are new. They haven't existed for years. So let's come to your point about the Tory record. Absolutely not everything works when you're in office for a long period, but we did leave the European Union, the major promise of 2019. The economy was the fastest growing in the G7 when we left office. Inflation was at 2%, and we had a plan to deal with illegal migration. And Rishi Sunak, to his credit, had taken really important steps to reduce legal migration.
Yes.
So yes, we made
Put up by
mistakes,
your
of
man
course
Boris.
we had, but things were big. Well, if you remember what was going on at the point at which migration took off, it was at a point at which we'd just ended COVID and people thought there wasn't going to be a return to work in Britain and that there was a desperate shortage of labour. That turned out to be wrong, but it wasn't malicious.
No,
Now,
I'm sorry.
inevitably make
I haven't
mistakes on
got time to
imperfect
talk about
information.
why that, by the way, didn't end COVID. You stopped having outrageously stupid lockdown policies, and the only reason we didn't have a
Well, look, I
lockdown
agree
in
with that.
December 2021
Julia,
was because
you
Boris
know-
Johnson was going to be ousted. So let's not pretend that Boris Johnson did this for good reasons.
Julia, you know we agreed on COVID. We talked about it regularly.
Yeah, I don't remember you ever speaking out on it,
I went as far as I
Jacob.
could. Oh, well, I was bound by collective responsibility, and I went as far as I could within those confines.
Yeah, anyway.
But that was unfortunately done for the best reasons that we were told by the Chief Medical Officer and the Chief Scientific Officer, now Labour Minister, that we would kill people if we didn't do it.
You say
Well, it's quite an important discussion, and you raised it.
Yes, we said we killed people by doing it. Instead, if every single sitting Tory MP decided, other than maybe Kemi Badenoch, still leader, decided to defect to Reform, and the Tory party was effectively, one-woman band left, just say in that scenario, are you still saying you would never defect to Reform?
The boy stood on the burning deck when all but he had fled. Casabianca is a great poem, but I'm not sure it makes a political reality.
I'm asking a
Or even a
hypothetical.
political
You're saying you would
hypothesis,
never
for that matter.
defect. Is there no scenario? You were the last person in the party.
I'm saying, well, I'll put you back to my earlier question. Would you go to GB News if
for goodness
Talk
sake.
Radio decided that it wasn't going to carry on? It's a silly hypothetical.
OK, we've got about 10 seconds left, so I'm going to have to leave it there. So Jacob Rees-Mogg, we made a good effort to get some information out of you. Former Conservative Government Minister, he's not going to defect, but is there anyone else? Can't wait to get Philip Ingram's thoughts on this. We're also going to talk to Rupert Lowe, still an MP, no longer for Reform. Up next, stay tuned. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon and welcome back to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. And no, Jacob Rees-Mogg, I'm not going to GB News, but thank you very much for the offer. Listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker or watching on YouTube or your connected device, I very much appreciate you joining me here at Talk, where I've made my home since 2016. Lots to talk about in this hour. Good news keeps on coming for Keir Starmer. The first deportation of a Channel migrant yesterday under the Prime Minister's one-in, one-out deal with France was cancelled at the last minute. And guess what? Today, plane took off yet again. These are Air France commercial flights without, again, any migrants. One migrant we know for a fact was told he was going to be on the 9 a.m. flight from Heathrow to Charles de Gaulle Airport. And on that flight, there was no Channel migrant being escorted by border officials. We know that because the Sun's Thomas Godfrey, a news reporter with the Sun, was on that flight and was certain that that day there was no one on that. Flights have been postponed amid protests by charities and threats of legal action. We are a joke country. Meanwhile, Downing Street continues to be in meltdown as Keir Starmer struggles to explain why he initially backed Peter Mandelson last week at PMQs to stay in the job as a UK ambassador to the United States, even while officials were urgently investigating new information about his links to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, in spite of the fact that actually at no point should he have appointed him to the job, having resigned, well, been forced out twice over financial scandals. And we already knew way before that about his close friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, which continued long after he'd been convicted of soliciting a 14-year-old girl for prostitution. Yeah. Just call him the rapist that he was. Also, we've seen the Prime Minister's Director of Strategy. I know, I'm as surprised as you are to find out he had one. His name is Paul Overton. He's forced to quit after it was revealed he'd sent some sexually explicit emails to a former colleague about a conversation he'd overheard with other people, which happened to involve Diane Abbott as a subject of a rather cruder version of the game Snog, Marry, Avoid. Because apparently no one's allowed to have a private conversation which they say, oh, not perfectly politically correct things. I know they'd be calling for my sacking and they'd be calling for a Tories or a Reform person sacking, but aren't we supposed to be better than that? Plus, we're going to be talking about house builders warning the London Mayor Sadiq Khan, who's probably busy plotting some embarrassing stunt about Donald Trump, who's arriving later today for his state visit. But they've warned Sadiq Khan that he's making the capital a no-go zone for investment. The Home Builders Federation said the Labour mayor's unrealistic affordable housing targets were strangling attempts to build new homes. And my God, we need new homes in the capital. All that coming up, plenty more besides. Love to hear your thoughts on the first deportation flights for Channel migrant Monday and Tuesday under this one-in, one-out deal. No one's been on either of those flights because of those last-minute threats of legal action. I know we're all very shocked about it. Love to hear your thoughts. We are a bit of a joke country. We've got a bit of a joke Prime Minister. He's probably concentrating on other things, trying to shore up his own premiership. But what's your thoughts? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Joining us for a conversation throughout the show is Philip Ingram, MP, former senior military intelligence officer. I hadn't had much chance to talk to you with quite crowded, I guess. We are going to get your calls. I promise we had to drop them to speak to our reporter live from Paris about those flights. But Philip Ingram, your thoughts on Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg? When I asked him about whether he was going to defect, following on from Danny Kruger, and you got the likes of Nadine Dorries and Jake Berry, former MPs, and like him, a former MP, lost his Somerset seat at the last election. He immediately was asking me whether I'm going to defect to another channel. And it annoyed me because he used up quite a lot of the interview, trying to move him on to whether he's going to defect. He's basically implying, he would never defect from the Tories and you stick by the Tories, but he wants. But yeah, you're a former senior intelligence officer. What did you read from what he had to say, and how he said it.
What he said, the way he held himself and the way he put his words together. And we'll have to remember, Jacob Rees-Mogg is very good at choosing his words exceptionally carefully. Whenever you ask that question, he immediately deflected. He immediately deflected to a personal attack and putting you into as uncomfortable a position as he could. He was doing that deliberately because he didn't want to directly answer the question. Then in his answers to the question, he started to confuse conservative with conservatism, with Tory, with Conservatives, with the right coming together.
With the views and the party as the same thing.
Exactly.
But he was certainly hinting at the possibility of a future coalition.
He was, but my reading of it was he's almost suggesting that in the same way that we had under Tony Blair, New Labour, that reform is almost part of what would be a new Tory element of the future, and therefore you're reading what he is saying. He's not ruling himself out of jumping ship. He's not saying he's definitely going to do it, but it's certainly an option that I would say he's seriously considering.
Well, when I was asking if every other MP, every sitting MP resigned, it was just Kemi Badenoch left, would he not defect then? Or if it was just him left, would he not defect then? And again, answer came there. None.
No, that was very, very telling indeed. Jacob, you can't hide things as well as you think you can.
Yeah, well, if you're still listening and watching, Mr. Jacob Rees-Mogg, thank you very much indeed for that. Right, well, let's actually put a lot of these questions and a lot of these issues to my next guest. Rupert Lowe is an MP, sits as an independent since leaving the Reform Party. It is leader of a new group called Restore Britain. Very good afternoon to you, Rupert.
Good afternoon, Julia.
How are you? Very well indeed. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I do just want to ask you about your former party. First of all, I want to get on to some of the policies which perhaps are more of a concern to our listeners and our audience in terms of stuff affecting their daily lives. But we had this defection from Danny Kruger, the first sitting Tory MP, following the likes of former MPs like Nadine Dorries, Jake Berry, quitting the party and moving over to Reform. They've now gone back to 5 MPs after losing you in various. They've gone from 4 to 5 to 4 to 5 constantly. What do you make of the decision of a pretty senior, well-respected, a sort of a thinker Tory moving over to Reform UK? Does it make you think that actually that might be the party to join back again?
Well, at the end of the day, Julia, let me say that I did as much as anybody to help build up Reform support when I was in the party, and it was a shock to me when they, for some extraordinary reason, politically made an attempt to assassinate me. Which hasn't worked. And as you say, we've now set up Restore Britain, which is to unify people, not divide them. I was quite surprised when Danny left and joined Reform. I think Danny is a very considered politician. He's got a history of basically being involved on the front line for quite a long time. And I think he's very well respected. Well, I know he's very well respected in his constituency. So I think what you'll find, and I think from Reform's point of view, it's good news that they've managed to attract a man like Danny Kruger. I think one needs to ask him the reasons why he felt he needed to jump now, but he's chosen to do that.
Well, he gave a very long speech yesterday explaining why he believes the Conservative Party is over. I mean, you believe, don't you think the Reform's over as well?
No, I didn't. I've never said that, Julia. I respect Reform's voters. Where I have an issue is Reform's leadership. And what Reform's leadership did to me doesn't smack of a professional party. And I think, other than now Danny, there are very few people who I would describe as political heavyweights running Reform. So I don't have an issue with Reform's supporters. Indeed, I got on extremely well with most of them. Mm-hmm. I have an issue with Farage, Anderson, Youssef, and to some extent Dickie Tice. But I don't have an issue with the supporters. The supporters are quite rightly disaffected with the way the country's being governed by both Labour and the Tories. And as you know, my view is that Parliament now is just a charade. It's a sort of group of people that the media comment on and the media talk about. But actually, the real power doesn't lie with the parties. The real power lies with the permanent secretaries and the civil service, who the front bench is singularly failing to hold to account. Okay. So, I mean, you probably have a different view, but that's my view. And I think what we've got to do before the next election is find a formula which is going to deliver for the British people. That was the genesis.
I think that's where we will all come to agreement.
The genesis of the difference between Nigel and I wanted when it became clear to me that Reform could win the election, which was the first hurdle to get over, the first hurdle was to get people into Parliament, which we did. The second hurdle was effectively then to get to the stage where we could win the election. The third stage is then to put up structures, a plan, a shadow cabinet, policies which are going to deliver. And that needs to be planned, as we've seen from Donald Trump. He learnt from his first term in office, and he was well prepared for his second term. And that's exactly what needs to happen. And that was the genesis of my difference with Nigel, which clearly, for whatever reason, he decided I was pushing him on that, or I was becoming a threat to him, or whatever. But they did what they did for their reasons.
Okay, let's not hash over the old ground. I know you spoke of that many times. Let's talk about where we are.
I think in Danny's case, Julia, it's very important to look at old ground.
Okay.
I'm amazed he didn't ring me up and actually try and better understand what had happened.
Okay.
But anyway, he didn't.
All right.
And he may
I'd like to talk about policy, to talk about, you respect to, the supporters and voters, about policy that people do care an awful lot about. According to the latest polls, in the last few months, the number one issue for an awful lot of people, even though we're facing major economic woes, the NHS, the immigration, mass uncontrolled, illegal and legal immigration, and inability to get rid of anybody. The government signed this deal, this one in, one out deal with France. I mean, we kind of derided it at the time on the basis it was, 50 in a week, 50 out week, given that we've got 17 times that arriving every week, and we're going to have more people coming in legally. We're going to pay for them and all their family to come over. Not quite sure how this benefits us, but some 50 migrants were detained a few weeks back. They've been held near Heathrow. They've been assessed and approved by France to be returned to them. We understand that an Air France flight from Heathrow to Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris was due to take off yesterday with at least one deported migrant aboard. That didn't happen because of legal threats and protests by charities. And today, we understand, a 9 a.m. flight was supposed to take off with at least one other Channel migrant. Again, quite a huge cost, accompanied by border officials. That didn't happen either. Do you think it is actually possible for any government to deport any of these migrants against their will?
Well, you know full well it is, Julie. You just have to have the will to do it. As you and I rudely agree, this sort of scam was never going to work. And, the British people voted in 2016 to take back their sovereignty, which means that laws passed in Parliament should be the laws that pertain to the country. As we know, that a lot of these international laws, now Tony Blair laid a lot of these heffalump traps, the international law trumps British law. This is the problem. So what you have to have, and you probably know that yesterday we started a petition for a parliamentary debate on this issue, and we've received, well over 220,000 votes. We actually got to the 100,000 within about 5 3/4 hours. So this is the power of Restore Britain and a unified movement that actually shows the government, shows Starmer, shows those people, those misguided people in Parliament, that there is a huge will amongst the British people to protect our borders, to protect our national interest, and ultimately to detain and deport all those people who arrive here illegally, are living here illegally, foreign criminals in our prisons. It's just a question. We can do it. Of course we can do it.
Do you think this government has the will to do it?
Against military invasion, for goodness sake, Julia. It's a matter of having the willpower to do it.
Yeah.
And the problem is the government doesn't have to suffer the consequences of these people coming in, being settled in the middle of very decent communities where high trust societies have developed. And these are people from different cultures. They're not, I just don't accept the fact that they are asylum seekers. They're economic migrants. Many of them, most of them are young fighting age men, and they are damaging the fabric of Britain. Everybody in the country can see that. I mean, you call yourself the home of common sense. I say to the British people, common sense says we should detain and deport all these people. And as you probably know, I've probably done as much as anybody in Parliament to shift the Overton window on the rape gangs and on detaining and deporting illegal immigrants. If you and I break the law, that's doing something illegal. What happens to us? We get sent to prison. Come on.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It's illegal. They're coming here illegally and they're damaging the country.
Well, there's no doubt at all. This is definitely a damaging issue for Keir Starmer. On the left of his party, they don't think anyone should be deported or detained. And on the right and everyone else in the country, they think it's insane that we're not dealing with this issue. He promised to deal with it. He said lots of things. He's clearly not able to do so. He's also facing a lot of pressure over these investigations over what he knew when about Peter Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Close friendship that continued long after, and very intensely and very lovingly, long after Jeffrey Epstein had actually pleaded guilty to charges of solicitation of prostitution of a 14-year-old girl. What do you make of Keir Starmer being a man who thought that Mandelson was someone he should back at PMQs, even though he knew there was an investigation into these emails that had been released by Bloomberg, that he appointed him in the first place, and that he, as a father of a teenage girl himself, thought that someone who was friends with someone who had done what he'd done with teenage girls was a suitable person to represent this country in America?
Well, I raised this in the House, Julia, so I'm being entirely consistent on this. I think the process that was followed by the Prime Minister and his advisers should be made totally transparent. We should have all the papers face up so that not only the House of Commons, but the public can actually see the process that was followed. Quite apart from the fact that I mean, we all knew that Peter Mandelson had been photographed in his bathrobe, discussing the sale of Sempra commodities with Epstein over breakfast, which, as you know, Epstein had a very fine eye for a photograph. I mean, that was a damning photograph. Things like talking about his hospitality and putting in brackets, yum, yum. I mean, some of the stuff is pretty gawping. But the question, assuming they can get over the process they followed, which I think was probably flawed, because as Starmer admits, he knew that Peter Mandelson was friends with Epstein. The question I asked in Parliament was, why was a man who'd called Donald Trump a danger to the world, who'd been described by the Americans as an absolute moron, who'd been removed from public office at least twice for misfeasance, ultimately, why was he the right person to appoint? Quite apart from his relationship with Epstein, which we all knew about, why was he the right person to appoint as the guardian of the most important relationship this country has with any other country in the world?
It was. I mean, when he was first appointed, many of us were saying this is an insane appointment. Do you think this tells us about Keir Starmer's, just briefly, if you could, just short on time, in terms of Keir Starmer's?
I don't think it tells us about
Keir Starmer's competence and Keir Starmer's morality.
I think it tells us about the endemic problem with modern politics, Julia, which is that Mandelson went right to the heart of the Blair government. He was one of, I call them the four angels of the apocalypse, or the four horsemen of the apocalypse. I should say angels, the wrong word. Four horsemen of the apocalypse, that's Blair, Brown, Campbell, and Mandelson. So he goes right to the core of all of the legislative damage that was done to undermine our Constitution by the Blairite team. And therefore he, I think, goes right to the root of Labour. And you know, it's these people. It's a bit like, you know, the balls in the cut drawer always have the same numbers on them. Okay, a few of them disappear, but Mandelson is still in there, and he's got the right pedigree, and therefore his name came out. There are many other people far better qualified than
without all of those big skeletons, not even in the closet. Rupert Lowe, we'll have to leave it there. He's an independent MP, leader of Restore Britain. I so appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much. Philip, give me a response to what Rupert Lowe had to say.
Yeah, one thing that Rupert said that I found very interesting and quite worrying. He said that ministers were failing to hold permanent secretaries to account. You know, ministers are not there to hold permanent secretaries to account. Ministers are there to lead.
Yeah.
And they're not leading.
Well, they're not able to lead. It's not possible to lead with civil service basically deciding that they have a veto on anything that's done.
And that shows a real weakness in government in not getting themselves into a position where they're getting those that are, you know, civil servants. The word is in servants. They're there to serve the government.
Do you know what? I've said this and written this so many times. I do not see, and certainly if Reform did get into power, or even if the Conservatives got into power, look, Labour thought, as soon as we get into power, well, all the civil servants are on our side, so we'll be fine. No, they're not. No, you can't get anything done. You can't get people to come and work at their desks instead of on their sofas. They can't get them to do anything. We need to have a root and branch clear out. Elon Musk style, and Elon Musk didn't even get to do the whole job, but literally, what do you do? Where do you do it? And do you understand that you are a servant and not the master. And I'm sorry, the master is the British people, and who we choose to elect gets to do what they said they were going to do in their manifesto. And you, as a public servant, don't get a veto over it.
Yeah, in military terms, they were irreverently referred to as the SA-80 when it first came in, a rifle that came in after this self-loading rifle, which was brilliant. You couldn't fire it.
Very true. Thank you very much, Philip Ingram. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to hear from you. Apologies not getting some of the calls on in the last hour, but do get in touch, 0344 499 1000, about, you know, anything and everything we're talking about. This is Talk.
There's a variety of people there, and they would have been there for their own reasons. And I think it's very unfair to caricature the Unite the Kingdom rally as some kind of far-right march. But I have to say, some of the selection of speakers was somewhat questionable. Now, irrespective of your views of Elon Musk, I'm not sure if he is the right person in terms of providing us with advice to unite the kingdom, considering in last summer's violent disorder, he talked about how civil war is inevitable.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:25 is the time. Can't wait to get your calls on air. 0344 499 1000. What you want to talk about? Gaynor is in Leicestershire. She wants to talk about, Keir Starmer's latest woes. So another day, another set of woes, Gaynor.
Oh, what can I say? Lovely to speak to you.
Lovely to speak to you.
Show. How about my mental health and my feelings being offended every time the UK harmer, Keir Starmer, calls me a far right?
Yeah. Yep.
Nobody's cared about my mental health, and the fact that is.
Hope you haven't got a flag. Hope you haven't got a national flag, Gaynor. You know, that's the giveaway.
Well, that's it. They're all over the place. I'm the only one to put one up in our street, but that's only because they ran out of flags.
What do you make of what do you make of what his woes right now?
I don't know how he's can get up in the morning and look at himself in the mirror. He's just a smiling assassin. It's almost like he's working for the World Organisation to make what was Great Britain into a dumping ground, like the human equivalent to the RSPCA. I haven't got a clue.
There is I mean, he talks a good game on, tackling smashing the gangs and this one in, one out deal. But I mean, we were laughing at that deal when it first came out. It's like, this doesn't even touch the sides of what we're looking at. He doesn't get why it's a problem for us. It's just symbolic. But they can't even get a migrant on 2 flights in a row.
No, Keir Starmer, he can't smash an egg. He hasn't got a clue. He's nothing more but a lawyer, and he's using the human rights because he wrote it in the first place, and that's the only reason. I mean, all the people coming here, if only they listened to us. That's all they need to do. We're worried about the immigration. We're worried about being took over by a religion we're not comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, these are legitimate concerns and perfectly realistic concerns. What do you make of the Mandelson saga, or is that sort of a classic Westminster bubble thing where all the media and the politicians are talking about something which doesn't really make a blind bit of difference to anyone, or does it matter to you?
No, it don't, because he's been sacked now. The horse is bolted. It's too late down the road to do anything about it. He knew what he was like. They're all in each other's pockets in Westminster. And he's always been a slimy person.
Peter Mandelson?
Yes, he's never to be trusted. He's had more breaks than a bloody motorcycle rider. It's shocking. But he even got in.
Gaynor, I love it. Please call in again. That was a great call. Thank you very much. Do you know what I love? It's like anger, but also great humour, because that is so British, isn't it? It's so British.
Very much so.
George is on the line in Dundee. Hello, George. What do you want to talk about?
Hi, it's about some Conservative MPs moving over for reform, Julia. I'd have a few conditions with that. The conditions would be anyone who was or still is a COVID lockdown zealot, no thanks.
Yep.
Anyone who thinks a man in a dress can trump women's rights, no thanks.
Yep.
Anyone who thinks Islam is a special case, no thanks. Anyone who thinks mass immigration has been a benefit to the working class of this country, no thanks. And anyone who thought or still thinks Boris Johnson is a Conservative, no thanks. I want to vote reform, Julia. I do not want to vote for Tory Mark II.
That is the issue, isn't it? A lot of people are saying, do they really want all these defections? I have to say, I did raise something of an eyebrow over Nadine Dorries as a former MP and a former Tory MP and former minister. I mean, the Culture Secretary, the Online Safety Act and all of that, and a Boris sort of fangirl. Being someone that the Reform not only welcomed but put up as the second speaker in the middle of Nigel Farage's big welcoming speech at the Reform conference. I wasn't sure whether that was such a good idea. I thought she and lots of people who defected are the sacking the people that Reform voters wanted to move away from.
Correct. It's like being if you support Liverpool and Man United are a better team. Yeah. You don't want the whole Man United team in the Liverpool shirt. You want Liverpool players.
Yeah, that's the thing. Here's the thing, though. Voters don't get, they don't appear from nowhere unless we're going to be giving all the Channel migrants the vote sometime soon, which we probably will at some point. Who are we kidding? It's the way the country's going. But voters have got to come from somewhere. So Tony Blair took a load of, Margaret Thatcher's former, Tory voters, and Cameron got a load of Tony Blair's voters, and Reform got, Boris Johnson got a load of Brexit Party voters when the Brexit Party stood down to basically get Brexit done in 2019. That's what he got that big majority from. He wouldn't have got it on his own. And Reform have to get voters from somewhere. They're taking from the Tories, taking from Labour. What's the difference, taking voters and taking ministers?
There'll be some great thinkers in the Conservative Party, but Nadine Dorries and those... I want those great thinkers to be in the background helping Reform. I don't want them to be on the front bench. I don't want to see the same faces that have failed this country for 14 years.
Very good point. May I ask you just finally about this one-in, one-out deal and these migrants not on these planes being deported despite promises? What do you make of that failure?
Well, as expected. I mean, nothing is going to change with illegal immigration in this country until we get rid of the Conservative and the Labour Party and get rid of people who do not want to do anything about it.
Fantastic call, George. Thank you very much indeed. Philip Ingram, I mean, he feels very strongly about it. There is a big risk for reform. You know, like you see, like the future, the Tories defunct, and he always said, Nigel Farage was very clear, he wanted to destroy the Conservative Party. They say there's no coalition. Realistically, reform in the next election, biggest party but not a majority, they'd do a coalition with Tories. Of course they would, or enough Tories would go over. I can tell you that right now for a fact they would. But is there a risk of damaging their own brand by having a bunch of what people call failed Tories?
Well, they do, but then are they going to damage their own brand by having people with zero political experience and they've damaged the brand in putting people into different positions who they haven't managed to vet properly because they don't have the party political processes in place and everything else.
Okay.
So there's a lot of risks, and I think it's weighing up the risks, and this is where they need some competent people in there who can add a bit of horsepower to what Reform is doing to allow them to start to develop what they need as a machinery of government in the future. We
shall wait and see what happens. Anyway, do keep your calls coming in, 0344 499 1000. Coming up, we're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be hearing from immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson. You've heard him on the show many, many times about that one-in, one-out deal and abject failure to get any migrants deported on either of the Air France flights they've been booked on, both yesterday and today. What happens next? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. It's just coming up to 12:35. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and this is Talk, the home of common sense. Not much common sense going around when it comes to trying to actually deal with our illegal migration problem, quite apart from the huge numbers of people coming in. It does appear we really can't get rid of anyone and get them out, despite the Prime Minister doing a deal with Emmanuel Macron on a state visit just a few months ago, and it's signed and sealed by the former Home Secretary Yvette Cooper a month later in July. The one-in, one-out deal has not come to much fruition. It's a pilot scheme. By all counts, the French regard it as something they could just opt out of any time. Maximum we're looking at in this pilot scheme, some 50 deportees from this country going back to France, and in return we get to have 50 carefully chosen and vetted people who have more of a right to be in this country coming from France to here. Well, yesterday we understood that an Air France flight seats had been booked at great expense. Not a cheap flight to be on from Heathrow to Charles de Gaulle Airport, but there was not a single migrant on board. Today at 9 a.m. we know for a fact that a migrant was told that was the flight he was going to be on, and once again, and we know because a reporter from The Sun, Thomas Godfrey, who we spoke to a bit earlier at the airport after he'd got off the flight, there was no one on board that flight who was being deported. 2 flights, no migrants, another huge blow for this policy. But what is stopping those deportations happening? Well, let's talk about that with immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson, who joins us now. Good afternoon to you, Ivan.
Good afternoon, Julia.
So, I mean, they've detained these people when they got off boats a little while ago. I mean, there were a fraction of the number of people who actually arrived in any given week. 31,000+ people have come so far this year. And they detain these people and they vet them. The French have a veto saying, yeah, we'll take X and Y. We'll take this guy and this guy or whatever. They plan to put them on the plane. They don't end up getting on the plane. We're told because of protests from charities and some legal challenges. What would those have looked like, and on what basis could they be used to stop those flights happening?
Well, there's the one-in, one-out asylum swap is legally frail because it breaches a raft of conventions that we're signed up to, being the Refugee Convention and the European Convention on Human Rights. Now, one of the biggest problems of this one-in, one-out policy is that the Home Office haven't explained how the mechanism works. You'll remember the Rwanda policy fell on that hurdle because there needs to be a mechanism. So if you send someone to France, there needs to be a mechanism for that person to claim asylum. And the courts will want to know what that mechanism is.
For them to claim asylum in France?
Indeed. So the other problem is how do you define the word inadmissible? We have a legal obligation to consider and decide on anyone who wishes to claim asylum who's on UK soil. That's a Refugee Convention obligation that we have. Now, if we're going to send someone out the country, we need to make sure that they have a proper system and mechanism for claiming asylum. And also, they're not going to be then sent to another country, and that breaches Article 33 of the...
Is that the refoulement, a word which I'd never heard of before a couple of years ago? That basically a risk of being sent to Deportation. But we're talking about people being returned to the safe country that they were in before they came to this safe country.
Well, the courts need to know what these mechanisms are, Julia. You can't just simply turf people out and without...
You can.
Well, you can't. You can't. And also, you
might... You can. Literally can.
Well, I beg to differ, and I'll tell you why. Because, for example, Article 4 of Protocol 4 of the European Convention strictly prohibits mass deportation. So while
I wish it was mass deportation. They were trying to get one bloke on a flight.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But what I'm saying is that asylum seekers are entitled to the protection of the law, laws that we're signed up to. Now, you may not like it, and many of your viewers may not like it, but the fact remains is they're entitled to that protection. Now, this is the problem the government have. Even if they fail in the courts in England and Wales, what happened, you'll remember, in the Rwanda plan is that the claimants went to Strasbourg, to the European Court of Human Rights. You remember that plane when it was on the tarmac?
Yeah.
And I'm afraid the same thing's going to happen again.
But hold on a minute. One of the things we were told by Yvette Cooper, the then Home Secretary, after this deal was finally sealed, was that this was something they'd been working on. They wanted to, take some time because they wanted to, they'd learn the lessons of the Rwanda deal. It's why it was going to be a return to France rather than to a third country and the like. One would have thought that, especially given that it is a government of human rights lawyers and that's all their mates, you'd have thought they might have worked out how one could get around this. Are you saying that basically, while we're still signed up to the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, while we're still signed up to the Refugee Convention, we can't get rid of anybody? Full stop.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the government needs to have mechanisms in place and have it all worked out, have those agreements in place. So if someone does go to court, they can say, look, we are not avoiding our responsibilities. They're going to go to France. These are the mechanisms. So I'm really surprised they didn't get their ducks in order.
Well, that's the thing. They said that they had, and that what was taking the time was getting their ducks in order, because otherwise there's no point. Because there's nothing worse than announcing a policy you then can't deliver, as the Tories learned on the Rwanda scheme, which they didn't get up and running before the last general election. Here's the reality. Even if we did get out of the European Convention on Human Rights and say that the Refugee Convention doesn't apply in these particular cases, which I think is perfectly valid, because, by the way, national parliaments, the reason we elect MPs is to make or change laws. I mean, there wasn't a law that was created or a treaty that has been signed up to that is somehow sort of, engraved in stone and can never be changed. Otherwise, we wouldn't bother having elections ever again. What would be the point if they can't change the law? Even if we did go through that, and that is certainly what Reform are saying if they were elected they would do, and Tories, I think I would be absolutely gobsmacked if they weren't also offering the same if they survive to the next election. Would there still be a route for a migrant who's arrived here on a Channel boat to stop themselves from being deported? Do you think there would still be a way to do that?
Well, look, you have to have a receiving country. So even if there was no convention, no refugee convention, no European Convention on Human Rights, let's say we opt out of all of that, and that's going to be difficult because you need an act of parliament. It has to go through parliament.
It's not difficult.
Well, it is, because I don't think the government has the votes to do it. But anyway, even if you did that,
a Reform Party that was elected with the majority, or is in coalition with the Tories, who said they were going to do that, they could do that. If it was in their manifesto, the Lords wouldn't be allowed constitutionally to block it. It would probably take a couple of years. You could get that legislation through.
No, indeed. I think you'd need a majority of Reform to do it. But under the current structure of Parliament at the moment, no, that won't get through. But even if you did, let's just say he's
got a majority of 160. Keir Starmer could get any policy through he wants.
Time will tell, and I think that's going to be difficult, because a lot of people think that we should be in the convention within the Labour Party and within the Conservative Party as well. So I'm not sure that will go through. But anyway, even if we did, let's say we did, the problem is we can't return people to countries who won't accept them, or we don't know who they are. Yeah. We don't have any travel documents. So that's a major problem. The only way to solve it is to stop them getting on the boats in the first place.
But you're not going to stop them getting on the boats in the first place unless they think they're going to be moved on elsewhere, or in a camp when you're here. And then the human rights lawyers say, well, you can't do that either. What about them being removed? And this is something that Nigel Farage has talked about, to, a British territory somewhere. I think you mentioned the Ascension Islands, or somewhere that, they're not being deported. They're on a British territory. They're just perhaps not where they would like to be, but they're perfectly safe, humane conditions, but they're not able to work, on the black market for Deliveroo or Uber Eats making money, or they're not much use to the traffickers who want them to pay back the cost of their transport and the like. Would that be legally acceptable, or would there be an objection to that as well?
Well, if they've got family in the UK, remember that's the biggest pull factor here. While we're in the convention, that's going to be difficult. But
why? I've got family in New York. It doesn't mean I can just go, I'm just going to rack up and live here, please. Can you give me a hotel?
Well, this is it. What the courts don't like is blanket policies, and which again is prohibited under Article 4 of Protocol 4. But what you have to look at is each case on individual merits. Listen, I get a lot of hate mail because of the stuff I say. I'm only just saying the law. That's the law.
No, exactly. I don't want anyone to be sending you hate mail. You've always been very, very clear and just objective on this is the reality. Absolutely.
And I'm afraid unless we have we stop people coming across across the channel, it will not stop. Look, people will come to work illegally. And Zia from the Reform Party, Yusuf, I've forgotten his surname for a second, he made a valid point. We have 1 million undocumented people in the UK. 1 million, that's the estimate.
I think it's probably double that, actually.
Yeah, and so, we're talking about 25, maybe 50,000 a year asylum seekers maximum. But really, the problem is the people that are already here, undocumented. None of the parties other than reform are talking about it.
No, but most of those people are people who at least have come here and still they shouldn't be here. And I'd literally like to have a very clear bye-bye. We're going to give you 2 months to leave. Off you go, ta-ra. And otherwise things are going to get pretty difficult for you. I don't understand why anyone thinks that's controversial. I don't care how long you've lived here. But those people would have come on a student visa. They'd have been vetted at some point, a work visa when they first came here, as opposed to someone from God knows where, from a war-torn country, possibly a terrorist, criminality, coming from countries we don't even know who they are. Ivan Sampson, I so appreciate you joining us. He's an immigration lawyer. I'm very, very sorry you ever do get any abuse. You absolutely shouldn't. You've got every right to say what you say, and you're simply pointing out, facts, which is very, very helpful to us. We very much appreciate your time. Thank you for that. Philip Ingram, your responses, it's very frustrating.
It is, but this is where I don't understand it. This is a piece of European legislation, and this is UK lawyers interpreting the legislation. The same legislation applies in other European countries and other people who signed up to European Court of Human Rights legislation. The Germans have been able to send individuals back to Afghanistan, where you cannot, under the rules that have just been outlined there, guarantee the safety of those individuals. How come they can do that legally without the same sort of protests that are going in and the same sort of legal challenges, and we can't? This suggests to me that our interpretation of European legislation or European human rights legislation is much stronger than theirs, and we're getting our interpretation
and it's
wrong.
always an interpretation. And again, even the stuff, the right to family life and all of that, that Article 8, they always ignore. There's 2 paragraphs. There's 1 paragraph that gives them those rights, and then it's unless, and then you have to consider safety, security, the benefits for this country, the concerns of this country. They always forget about that, because fundamentally, the people in charge of this country right now in the Labour Party, the people in charge of our courts, the human rights lawyers, all the NGOs and all the charities, they genuinely don't think that having tens of thousands of undocumented men of fighting age coming from countries where God knows where they're from, because 90% of them throw away their documentation, that coming from third world cultures where they have very different views on us on pretty much everything, they don't think that's a problem. That's where we've got a problem.
And they just need to change the lens that we're looking at.
Absolutely. Well, again, mass sacking, civil service, lawyers, judges. Sorry, sorry, if you don't want to do the job according to how the British people have decided they want the job done, then you ain't in the job anymore. Just so you know, the Tory MP, Sir David Davis, has started that debate. It's a 3-hour debate today on the appointment process for Lord Mandelson in the Commons, and he formally requested that debate. We'll bring you up to date if there are any developments on that. Up next, though, we are going to be talking about why the London Mayor Sadiq Khan is making London an investment no-go zone for house builders. We'll talk about that with the YIMBY initiatives. Maxwell Marlowe up next. This is Talk.
there is no route for Andy Burnham to become leader of the Labour Party.
Correct.
It's quite important to say that.
Yeah.
Whether he wants it or not, because he is the Mayor of Greater Manchester, and because that role includes running the police force, he cannot double job, as it's called, so he can't be an MP and the Mayor of Greater Manchester. So he would have to make a choice. There would have to be a seat available for him to run in. He would have to win that seat. Then there would have to be a Labour Party contest. There's a lot of what-ifs involved in that sentence.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, just to get you up to date that Sir David Davis is leading a debate, which he managed to get an emergency debate on 3 hours worth of time, which MPs are going to have to discuss why Peter Mandelson was appointed as our ambassador to the United States, and what does the Prime Minister know and when about that man's relationship and close friendship with Jeffrey Epstein after he was convicted of basically abusing young girls. Extraordinarily 3 hours, and I have to say I'm supportive of us looking into this, but do MPs have things that perhaps might have more impact on us to be discussing? Possibly, maybe things like, I don't know, housing and the shortage of housing. Now, this government has made a policy out of, they're going to build up 1.5 million new homes in this country over a 5-year period. Well, they're already way behind schedule. It was a policy that was being pushed by Angela Rayner. What's she doing now? There's a question. Well, she certainly bought her own home, but lots of people don't get a chance to buy their own home because there aren't enough new ones being built. Well, now the construction industry leaders from the Home Builders Federation trade group say that the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has got such unrealistic affordable housing targets that it's strangling attempts to build new homes, and basically says that London is now an investment no-go zone. Well, let's talk about this with Maxwell Marlowe, who's Director of Policy at the YIMBY initiative, standing for Yes in My Backyard. Good afternoon to you, Maxwell.
Good afternoon, Julia. How are you?
Very well indeed. Thanks for joining us. Why is London a no-go zone for investment?
Oh, so many reasons. I think, the three main ones are the affordable housing requirements that the Mayor of London's putting in place, and that means that rents rents need to be capped at a certain level, and that all comes from the developer's pocket. So they don't want to be losing money on that. The second reason, fundamentally, I think this is the biggest one, is the building safety regulator, which, a lot of your viewers may never have even heard of. And this was in response to the Grenfell tragedy. So absolutely right that we build really safe and secure buildings. But the way in which it's being managed is just killing the industry, right? So since 2023, only 29 developments have been approved in London to go ahead. And I want you to understand that for your viewers, is that
10 million people live in London. 10 million people in the London area, and only 23 projects.
Only 29 projects over 7 stories, and we should be building tall in London because that's that makes the most sense. Look at any city around the world; they're tall buildings there because land is so tight, and it means that essentially, for your viewers who live in maybe the Greenbelt or in the commuter suburbs, that means that building is going to be put on in their backyards, and I'm sure they're not going to be happy about that at all. So
indeed.
he's
But that's
well
the thing.
behind the target.
This is about a bottleneck. This isn't like these projects are all unsafe. This is, I know I've read something about a project being delayed by about a year because the signage about the fire exits was like 1 point in the font. It was changing like 1 point too small legally. They've got it slightly wrong. And it took another year to get them to approve. It's sort of like trying to get British Telecoms. If you're trying to do any comms, British Comms is the bottleneck. And again, this is regulation and red tape rather than, people trying to put up dodgy buildings.
Exactly. And I think, the intentions of the regulator are really good. It'd be great if every building was the safest in the world. But the way the regulator behaves and the way it regulates means that, everyone's going to be stuck in less safe accommodation. fundamentally, because we just can't build these houses. I mean, the Mayor of London is so far behind, City is so far behind its housing targets. We've 23 of the boroughs in London, of which there are 33, haven't started building a single private home this year. Right, so it is really that bad.
And we are talking. I mean, again, we're not to be London-centric about this. This is about, capital cities, this is where a huge amount of migration comes, a huge number of people who need homes, can't afford homes. This is where, I think most people I know who live outside of London, when they hear about what rents and house prices are in London, they just guffaw. They think you're taking the mick, frankly.
Absolutely. You were just talking earlier to an immigration lawyer about people coming over on boats. So in Q1 this year, only 1,200 homes were built in London, which would be easily taken up, in a week of people coming across on boats.
And often are, we know. But going back to when you were talking about these affordable housing targets, now, it's been a big issue. There's a lot of developments where local councils give approval, and the deal is they're going to do, 20%, 30% or whatever of these homes are going to be affordable housing. I know the current target is 35%, so affordable, including social and council housing. And often what happens is the developer then goes halfway through, it's going to cost a lot more than we thought. We're going to have to put the number down with a smaller percentage, and we end up just simply not getting the housing that ordinary people on ordinary incomes can afford.
Exactly. So this is one of the issues that economists face when they look at the affordable housing and social housing crisis in London, which is that because you're not building enough homes in general, maybe that is because of the affordable housing requirements from what we call Section 106, it means that those houses aren't being built. So we see greater pressure on the market, which means rents rise, and so do the requirements for affordable housing. It's a total doom loop, which a lot of politicians really struggle to get their heads around.
It's almost like they're not very good at their job and don't really understand how the private market works. Because, of course, if there was, I'm not talking about people who got to build anything they want, but people want to buy homes or rent homes, and people want to make money by building them. And I find it absolutely extraordinary. There's never a shortage of supermarket you might want, or a garage, or a shop that's selling you stuff you want to buy. But uniquely, the one thing we all need, which is a home, there seems to be government control over it, which prevents anything from actually happening. Build more houses has long been the mantra of this show. Maxwell Marlowe, Director of Policy at the YIMBY Initiative, thank you so much for joining us. Philip Ingram, those stats you gave are absolutely extraordinary. And it won't just be London where this is happening, it'll be other major cities too.
Oh, it's across the country.
You're in Birmingham, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in Birmingham. And there's a lot of property being put up in brownfield sites, but it's very difficult to work out what property is good traditional social housing, and because it's being mixed in, and the developers are mixing it in.
But mixing it is largely thought to be a good thing, though. You don't have, you're not having that council. You have people living together in communities. So it is a good thing,
but at the same time, you're then seeing what were traditional social housing areas which have all been sold off and all privatised. You can't work out what it is, and this is why anything which creates this level of grey is where you can.
You can't just import 10 million more people and then not barely build any houses and wonder why house prices and rents have gone up. This is basic mathematics.
But then we know 10 million out.
Yeah, exactly. This is not something that any of our politicians have been very good at. But there we are. Philip Ingram, thank you very much indeed. Great to have your thoughts, your expertise on the show today. Thank you for that. I say expertise. Ian Collins is coming up next. Hello, love.
Well, frankly, it's uncalled for in the workplace. I think you'll find, Julia.
Hope you're not playing, was it Snog, Marry, Avoid with any of your